Із Америки приїхав наш надійний побратим, познайомтеся із ним.
Гей, Марс!
В росіян зі сраки дим.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
За ракету на паскудних ворогів випускає весь наш гнів.
Гей, Марс!
Робить все без зайвих слів.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Московити зі снарядами гребуться на складах, коли робить свій бабах.
Гей, Марс!
Наганяє лютий страх.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Розробляють окупанти свої плани у штабах, але чути знов бабах.
Гей, Марс!
Лупить нечисть по зубах.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Окупанти лиш заповнили склади своїм больним, як вітається із ним.
Гей, Марс!
Підіймає чорний дим.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Не любити московитів і довести нелюбов помагає знов і знов.
Гей, Марс!
Найточніший орколов.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Гей, Марс!
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто доводи, всяке озброєння, різні потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer. I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt. Welcome back to day 179 of the stream and another night of fundraising to help those in Ukraine.
And of course, I told everyone that if we were able to reach $1,000 before the end of the anthem, I would throw in $600 into tonight's fundraiser. Not only did we reach $1,000, we actually got up to $1,500 before the end of the anthem. And I'm a man of my word. I don't say crap and fall back off of it. And also, I would like to say another thing. Tonight's additional $500 that is being thrown in is accredited to a single viewer. Susan L., who is on our Discord and also a fervent watcher of our channel, has helped us to be able to raise this much tonight, personally in support of Ukraine. It would have been sin anyways, but it is wonderful to know that we were able to get that much support for the fundraiser before the anthem was even over. So, y'all should see it in the chat right now. Actually, give me just a second. I have to go through the credit card stuff on my phone, so give me just a second. But it should pop up here any second. 1 second, and it should be in the chat right now. There we have it. And we've gotten all the way up to $2.3 thousand in literally 13 minutes. It's absolutely impressive, and we haven't even talked about tonight's fundraiser and who it's for yet. Tonight's fundraiser is for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. Revive Soldiers of Ukraine is an incredible nonprofit, and we have done multiple fundraisers for them. And I have to say that what they do actually does make a difference. They focus entirely on the rehabilitation and, I guess you could say, the treatment of soldiers who have been injured in war. It can include, as Operator Starsky's story once said on stream, it can include a soldier who had been shot in the head and had to kind of go through a lot of traction to be able to recover. It could be amputations. It could be anything like that. And Revive Soldiers of Ukraine is there and constantly supporting and helping out these soldiers who have sacrificed so much for their country. And so if you would like, please make sure to support them tonight. That's what this fundraiser is for. And it is, of course, just to give the quick little disclaimer, it is run through the YouTube Give system. YouTube Give is a system operated by YouTube itself, where creators like me are able to create the fundraiser through their platform, and they do all of the managing of the money. So it's an entirely safe system. Of course, this is the only way we run fundraisers, because it ensures that they are not scams, because YouTube makes sure that they are vetted and verified before we can ever have the chance of running a fundraiser for them. And also, they do all of the managing of the money. We don't touch a single cent of it, and I really like that a lot, because that also gives a lot of extra credibility that this is a safe way to donate. There's a lot of scammers out there right now who have been trying to scam and, I guess you could say, skim a little bit of money off of very nice and kind-hearted people over the course of this war. And as the enforcer and having a Discord channel where a lot of these attempts have been made, I can tell you there's been dozens of them. Multiple people coming through saying, hey, if y'all give me $500, I can get myself a helmet. And it's like, what? You know, but anyways, with that, we've gotten all the way up to $3.5 thousand before I've even gotten done talking. We're now up to 3.6. We are blowing through the roof tonight. I think we're going to reach 5,000 before I'm even done talking here. So with that, we're now going to get on to the news tonight, and we have some big news indeed. Some of y'all may know that the Ukrainians have been targeting the 3 major bridges across the Dnipro River near the Kherson area over the past few weeks, almost constantly, trying to ensure that Russian supplies and heavy armor cannot cross to support the Russians that are currently occupying this pocket. We can see today that a HIMARS rockets actually flew back down into that bridge again and slammed clean into it, most likely causing irreparable damage. Here's the video of it actually hitting, not the lock bridge. Let me actually show you all this real quick, because there's 2 bridges here at the Nova Kakhovka Bridge. There is the lock bridge, which is this very small little stent that goes over the Nova Kakhovka's dam's lock, where ships are able to pass. And then there's the Nova Kakhovka Bridge that is in front of the dam. From what we can tell in this footage here, these HIMARS missiles did not hit the lock bridge, which has always been the target so far. It hit the actual bridge itself. So here's the video. We can see the explosions in the distance, and that right there is the dam. So this is hitting dead onto the dam's bridge. The explosions are still coming in. The missiles are rocketing down straight onto their target and are most likely knocking out this bridge once and for all. When you see the poofs of smoke in the sky from the air defense systems that unsuccessfully did not shoot down these missiles, and once again as it zooms in, you can clearly see the dam right there, and all of those missiles appear to have hit near the very edge of the bridge, more towards the eastern side.
Бля, ну клали кучно. Кучно, сука.
with that, that's the end of the video, and it is impressive to see the Ukrainians might have finally knocked this bridge out. We've seen that they've committed multiple attacks on it, and we have gotten video and picture evidence as of late to show that it has not been entirely knocked out, but there is evidence and substantial proof of attacks there at the Nova Kakhovka Dam. We've seen some cratering and some minor damage to the lock bridge, and also the bridge right around this corner right here, which I believe these may be... I don't want to say anything for certain because I don't know exactly how this dam works, but this may be where the electrical turbines are that has the water flow through them and creates electricity. But still, as we can see in this video, let's go back and look real quick so that way we can see what part of the bridge this hit exactly. Let's go back again just a little bit more. Alright, so we can see a funnel over here on this side of the river. And if we look over here, or over here, don't see a funnel right there. Maybe. Just trying to make sure that they weren't looking at it from the north. They were looking at it from the south. Let's look at that one more time. It appears that there's like a little island thing right here. So they were looking at it from about right here, somewhere around here, or right around here. And they were looking at the dam this way. So somewhere in that direction. So the explosions were coming off of the dam. We can see the little, like, I don't know what these things are. They're like blue cages. Apparently they've moved. They can move, I'm supposing? I don't really know. But apparently they can move because we can see they're in a different position in this video. And we can see that those missiles struck just about right here on this bridge. Right at the very end of it. And so I'm wondering... because the explosions actually look like they're a little spread out. It may be over 3 entirely separate spans. They're incredibly short spans of this bridge, meaning that they may have actually knocked it out. I'm not entirely sure. We'll still have to get video evidence and footage seeing that this bridge has definitely been destroyed, but considering that the Russians have already showed that it has been moderately damaged, and now this strike is hitting in the exact same place that we've seen damage occurring on the bridge before, this bridge may be out of action altogether. If it is... happy days, because we already know that the railroad bridge down near Kherson, which is right here, it has been destroyed well enough that there's been kind of a fissure down the middle, a split, and both sides of the bridge have started to recede towards the shoreline, making it completely unusable. And it would take a massive amount of time, funds, and effort to try and make that bridge usable once more. We also know that the Antonovsky Bridge has been hit hard and well enough that some spans may have been knocked out, although we still see the Ukrainians committing missile attacks on this bridge to this day. And we know that there's also been a pontoon bridge set up directly alongside it, because it's really the only place that's conducive for a pontoon bridge in the area. So with all this in mind and saying this means that that bridge, what may have been one of the 2 last standing bridges in this area, and if that one was knocked out, that means the entire Kherson front may be operating off of a single pontoon bridge right near the Antonovsky Bridge. This is massive, and I cannot state enough how big this really is, because that means that all supplies have to go over that one bridge, and it's also limiting the amount of vehicles that can get to one side or the other at a single given time. This is massive news, and I hope to see that the Ukrainians start to capitalize on this in the near future. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the bridge area and into a region that we kind of were able to tell that was east of Kherson, and we can see here that the border guards, which we've seen in action near Harkiv, Sumy, and Chernihiv in the earlier parts of the war, are now in action down here at Kherson, and they've realized that there is a bit of a Russian problem of them crossing the border without any kind of visas and passports. And so, as we will see in this video, they are politely telling them that no papers, no entry. So here's the video. When you see the tanks moving down the road, and boom goes the dynamite, the first hit on a Russian vehicle. We can see it now smoldering and burning in the distance, and now we can see them flip to what appears to be some kind of an SPG unit that may have committed that artillery barrage, but it's still very impressive to see that the Ukrainians in this area are still hitting Russian vehicles. And also, as the Ukrainians are hitting Russian vehicles, I've noticed something absolutely incredible. Our fundraiser, somehow within 22 minutes of this stream starting, has gotten up to $4,900. We are $100. We just did it! We just reached $5,000. Can we get a yee-haw, Matthew? Let's go. We reached $5,000 20 minutes in. That is unbelievable. 5.3
Wow.
thousand. Oh my
Anonymous
lord.
put in a $300 donation, and also I saw a $1,000 donation come in earlier from Anonymous. So whoever you are, if you are the same person, obviously we don't know for certain, but thank you to whoever you are that's putting in that massive support.
And here's another question. This is a question we need to throw up as a poll. I've seen some people demanding for blood in the fundraiser. They don't want the goal to be at $5,000. Some people are demanding that it goes up to $10,000. So let's ask that question, Matthew. Should the goal be raised to $10,000, yes or no? Man, that is absolutely impressive. We've never reached a goal this fast in a while, and I'm completely blown away. So let's see what everyone says about raising that to $10,000. And if everyone wants it to be so, we will do it. The Lee Spring Army is going well above what we usually do. Moving on north towards Davidiv Brid, we've seen today that the 28th Brigade has also fired on the Russians in the Kherson front, showing that there has been a resumption of some activity by the Ukrainians in this area. Here's the video of the 28th Brigade doing what it does. Also playing a little bit of rock music in the background. We can see the 28th Brigade looking at all of these Russian vehicles in the tree line, and the first shell slams down, incredibly close to one of the clusters of vehicles that we saw outlined in the red boxes. And it is unanimous, pretty much, that we need to raise the goal up to $10,000. So, real quick, everyone, I'm actually going to be hopping over here, and while y'all watch that video, I'm going to be over here upping that goal to $10,000. So let's see here if I can find it. There it is. All right, so edit. I want to set a goal of $10,000. $10,000. Continue, save. And so I think that on the other screen, that should have updated. Let me go back and see, and it has. Our goal is now $10,000. And as I was upping that goal, we were watching Russian tanks get obliterated by the 28th Brigade's artillery. All in all, this is a pretty impressive time, not only in the war, but also in the fundraiser as well. It's unbelievable to see that we are not just reaching our goal tonight, we are rocketing above it. And I know that a lot of people are going to be asking, why are you talking about the fundraiser so much? We are here to raise support for Ukraine on Sunday. And so we, of course, our goal tonight is to try and get as much funds as possible for a nonprofit that is helping out Ukrainian soldiers on the front line. It actually does make a difference. We've seen a lot of these nonprofits that we've ran before in Ukraine and operating, and it may be due to some of our donations that we've done as a channel in the Lee Spring Army. But with that, we're now on from this video and out of the Kherson area in general, because while we've gotten these 3 videos today showing that the front is starting to pick up activity and some major event has happened there, as the knocking out of the bridge is, we still do not see that the Ukrainians have finally conducted the counterattack we've been waiting for so long. We don't know exactly when they plan on doing this. It may be later on into the fall, more so in late September or early October, so we'll be waiting for the day that this front line eventually disappears and is on the Dnipro River. Moving on out of Kherson, however, and into Crimea, there's been a couple of things that have happened down here, and we can see that the pandemonium and the fear that the Ukrainians have been able to instill into the Russians is starting to take hold even in the Russian units that are still in Crimea. As we can see right here, this helicopter, this Mi-8, is a little scared. It is flying almost sea level across a heavily populated beach right near the town of Yevpatoria, and it's popping off chaff and flares straight into the people that are on the beach. And so here's the video. When you see the helicopter coming down the beach, and it's literally popping off chaff over these people. And in case y'all don't know, chaff is actually kind of hot, and it can burn someone if it actually falls onto them. And this guy is popping it off like he's got a bad smoking habit.
Да видел, зачем это делать, елки-палки. Охренеть, блядь, что творят.
Oh, man.
Дым везде идет.
So, remember everyone, to throw on as much sunscreen as possible if you're taking a trip to Crimea anytime soon, because not only is the sun going to burn you, but the chaff that's being shot out of that helicopter is going to fall to the ground and give you a nice little sunburn. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next picture we've gotten from Pataria, which is really funny. Now, Matthew, I don't know if you know about this. Well, actually you do, because you and me are brothers and grew up in pretty much the same kind of life. You know about stupid tourists, don't you?
Yes.
And we know that tourists can be some of the stupidest people on Earth. It's like people lose their minds once they become a tourist. Right?
Basically.
Alright, so with that in mind, I've seen a terrible picture today from the beaches of Yevpatoria. Apparently some Russian tourists are still going to stick it through, and we've seen this guy take a picture shirtless. This is the dumbest thing that anyone looking like this guy could ever do. This is a crime. This is pretty rough. But one thing I would like to note is that moving beyond this guy's very questionable appearance here in taking a picture like this, it appears that he stood in front of an S-400 surface-to-air missile battery and took a picture in front of it, letting the Ukrainians know that there is a S-400 battery system operating out of Yevpatoria right now. And here's the second picture, because it wasn't good the first time, they had to take a different angle of it. And here he is waving and literally giving away the position of his own nation's military. In the middle of wartime, this guy is showing off this horrendous physique, and not only that, showing off that horrendous S-400 back there that will now probably become a target of a Ukrainian missile strike. At least...
Now...
Say what?
Now, Enforcer, that would be ironic if that was a Ukrainian spy.
That would be ironic. And honestly, at this point, thinking about that, that would be the perfect thing for a Ukrainian spy or a saboteur to do, is to just blend in with Russian tourists and do stuff like this, because you could literally give away Russian military locations incredibly easily, and the Russian military there, the soldiers, will probably just sign you off as a tourist and think nothing of it, but you'll literally be giving away the position of one of Russia's best air defense systems, the S-400. It's so unbelievable to think that this guy was that dumb to do it. And not only that, but to take a picture shirtless looking like that. So with that...
And he apparently got burned by the chaff.
Yeah, apparently he did. He got burned by the chaff, and then he decided to take a picture near an S-400. I mean, look how red this guy is. Like, this guy... That's not really a tan anymore. That's just like being burned all over. So with that... That's the end of that little bit of news, and I hope y'all enjoyed that even the Russians are starting to destroy themselves without even really thinking about it. Look, honey, I'm so proud of our military. Take picture of me in front of S-400. A Ukrainian gets hold of that, S-400 system's destroyed within the week. And so with that, we're now moving out of this town of Yevpatoria, where we can see that a lot of pandemonium and also stupidity is starting to take over here. And we're going to be moving a little bit further down the coastline to the sweet old city of Sevastopol. Now, yesterday we saw that the Black Sea Fleet had to go racing into the ocean because a drone attack had hit the Black Sea Fleet's headquarters right at the docks. And today, it seems that the Ukrainians are still trying to carry out attacks against Sevastopol, although from what we can tell, none of them were successful, but it has led to a whole bunch of hilarious things. For example, the air raid sirens in Sevastopol are finally being used. It looks like taxpayer money for the Russians is finally going to something that's useful. And you can hear these air raid sirens right here in this clip. And that's the end of that little video right there, but once again, it's good to finally hear the air raid sirens are being played over a town that's not in Crimea, and it's being played because there's a whole bunch of Russian military units, the Black Sea Fleet, the Russian Air Force, that are sweating right now because there are incoming missiles and drones heading that way. Not only did the sirens go off last night, but we actually saw the reason why they did, as missiles were intercepted above the city of Sevastopol. Unfortunately, these missiles were not able to reach their target and hit Russian military infrastructure, but we did see that the attempt was made, and as they say, it's just worth a college try, and it's the try that counts, and we can see that right here as that missile was intercepted.
Yes.
It was so close, but still, sadly, it did not make its way to the actual target. But still, it's starting to probably make a lot of Russian commanders that have considered Crimea a safe basing point for the southern operations in this war to be an unsafe place for the southern operations in this war, and they too will probably be hopping in the traffic jam that reaches all the way from Kerch to Yalta, and trying to get out of Crimea and probably towards Novorossiysk or Rostov-on-Don or Krasnodar, where they'll probably begin to base their operations and headquarters from there, much further away from the front lines than they are now. Moving on from that and into our last video from Sevastopol, but you can also see air defenses being active last night over Sevastopol as they wildly fired into the air to try and hopefully shoot down incoming missiles and drones, supposedly, we're not sure which it was, that were on their way to Sevastopol. Here's the video of that as well.
На нахуй, как дохуя.
Так, время 21:00 в этот раз.
Ебать нахуй.
Нихуя себе.
Пиздец.
I love how these people who are behind the camera are just laughing and chuckling. Meanwhile, this Russian AA battery is literally crapping diamonds over there from the absolute tense stress of trying to stop the whole Russian military from getting blown away in Sevastopol.
Блять, просто нахуй. Давай, бля. Бля, у меня мурашки по коже нахуй.
These guys are laughing and joking and stuff like it wasn't just yesterday that those AA defenses weren't able to intercept even a simple lawnmower sounding Ukrainian drone that slammed into the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet. It's hilarious to me to think that the Russians are now on the back foot in terms of the war that's being waged with missile attacks, because for a long time, y'all may remember, if y'all been here for an incredibly long time on this channel, we have constantly watched Russian missiles slamming into Ukrainian cities, whether it be on bases, power plants, or normal residential buildings. We've been watching that for months. And now that the tables have been turned, notice one thing that's very important about this. We have not seen yet a single Ukrainian missile or drone attack slam into a residential building. Every single time they hit their targets, it is a military target. It's the Black Sea Fleet, it's an airbase, an ammo depot, whatever it is not residential by any means whatsoever. And so it does show that the Ukrainians have the ability, both sides as a matter of fact, have the ability to have the discretion of where those missiles actually fall. And seeing that the Ukrainians have now committed multiple missile and drone attacks throughout the entirety of Russia at this point, from Belgrade all the way to Crimea, it becomes very clear that these missile attacks that have been slamming into residential buildings in Ukraine are clearly deliberate. There's no other way to explain that rather than that reason, because now we can see that the Ukrainians are not doing that, and they are firing off probably fairly similar weapons to what the Russians are, at least in terms of their capability. I know an ATACMS isn't exactly an Iskander, but in terms of accuracy, considering that they're both ballistic missiles, although Russian stuff is usually of lower quality, you would assume that they'd still be able to hit their target. So with that, we're now going to be moving out of Sevastopol, and from all of that, wonderful news showing that the war has really turned tables, and it looks like it's not going well for the Russians anymore in any regard. We're now going to be moving to the city of Odessa, specifically off the coast. We've been hearing that there's been large minefields laid by both the Russians and the Ukrainians off the Ukrainian coast, and we've seen today that the Ukrainians had to blow up one of these. We're not sure whose side it was from, but they did have to blow one up as the mine apparently began to be set adrift and started floating towards shore. And we can see the video taken from a Ukrainian rib, I'm assuming, of them detonating this bomb, this mine at sea. And so here's the video. See them looking out across the open sea, and boom, the mine blows up. Actually, that thing was packing a punch. If a ship had run into that, I'm sure it would have just split in two. And that's the end of the video. And one thing you do have to remember every single time we speak about mines and such things like that is that merchant ships are now having to pass through these minefields towards the town, well, the cities of Mykolaiv and Odessa. And one thing that's incredibly interesting to me is that if ships are passing towards Mykolaiv, that means that they are literally straddling the Ukrainian and Russian front lines, as there are Russian forces here at Vasilivka on this side of the Dniprovsk Gulf, and there's also Ukrainian forces near Dniprovsk on the northern side of this gulf. That's very interesting to think about, is that at any given moment, MLRS rockets could start rocketing from one side over to the other, and some grain ship could just be passing through the middle of a firefight going on right above their heads. Kind of an interesting thought, actually. But anyways, with that, we have now covered all of the Southern Front news, and not only that, I'm absolutely floored tonight because we've never had a fundraiser like this in quite some time. We have reached, oh my lord, we just reached $7.4 thousand because of a $500 anonymous donation. This is unbelievable. I'm actually going to let Matthew take over and carry this hype train for a little bit so we can recognize all of the incredible people who have helped this fundraiser to get to the point where it is. And so, take it away, Matthew.
All right, and we interrupt this broadcast to bring you an important announcement. We have hit 7.4 thousand on the fundraiser, thanks to several people's donations, small and large. So, first up, we have to recognize our top donors. This is absolutely a humongous achievement. This early in the stream is what's so impressive about it. So thank you to everybody for your generosity. And first up, I want to recognize Smell Me Fingers for putting in a $2,000 donation. He didn't put it into the fundraiser here on the stream because he is from Australia, but he did put it into United 24, and I wanted to give him credit live on the stream. So Smell Me Fingers, big shout out to you, and thank you for your generosity and finding a way to donate, even though by some means we don't allow Australian donations for some reason. I don't know why YouTube does that.
I don't know why.
But anyways, to move.
I don't know why it does that either, but I do have to say, if you are from Australia, which apparently is not allowed to donate over YouTube, please go to the link in the description below, which will take you, well, actually, it's not on this fundraiser, it's actually on yesterday's. Make sure to go to yesterday's stream and go down into the description below and click on United 24, because that will take you directly to United 24's website, where you can donate directly to the Ukrainian government, which is also a great way to help, just in case if you're not able to contribute to this fundraiser due to YouTube's kind of weird rules, specifically pertaining to Australia. But with that, I'm going to let Matthew take over again so we can recognize all of the other large donors on tonight's fundraiser.
All right, folks, and bear with me. It is quite a long list of top donors tonight, so I'm going to try to make it not sound like an auction block. So here we go. We have a $250 donation from D. Shaw. We also have a $100 donation from Malachite, as well as a $200 donation from James Reyes. Used Gently, Paolo Corradini, High Speed Chase, Stephen Wheeler. Then we have a $179 donation from Amir Huckleberry. And then several $100 donations from ASCII892, William Allen, Wookie CS, Ed Roycer, Khan Azur, and then a $69 donation from PsyOps, good one there. And then we have a $50 donation from Rustin Rott, and several of those. So here we go on the really long list. We have one from Heather Fitzgibbon, Bass Girl, Stefan R., then we have one from some Arabic writing here. I can't read Arabic, but thank you very much for your support of the fundraiser. Then we have one from Shannon Alaminsky, Cindy Mitchell, William Ludwig, Axel K, Justice Ryan, Richard Bell, Tuan Pham, Stephen Mentier, Robert Harrington, Kyle Parkerson, Ole Hodovaniuk, I think it said, Telmed, and then we have one from Donated. And that is actually all of our top donations for the moment, and that was quite a long list. And I'm just looking here to make sure I didn't miss one, and it looks like we are good for now. So it looks like we're up to 7.7 thousand on the fundraiser, and as you all know by now, we raised our goal to $10,000 because we smashed that $5,000 goal so quickly, and we're only 30 minutes into the stream and already at 7.7 thousand. So that's absolutely tremendous. And once again, thank you all, LSA, for making it possible.
And I've got to say, it is unbelievable right now that we're at $7.7 thousand 40 minutes into stream. And it's, I don't even know how to explain it. It's the, like, not to use the same line over and over, but the Lee Spring Army has got to be the biggest force for good on YouTube that's ever existed at this point, beyond the specific YouTube channel, which we cannot name because we always apparently have internet connection issues after saying it, or we get DDoSed, but I still got to say, it is absolutely impressive, and I thank every single one of y'all who have donated so far, and everyone who will donate throughout the rest of the night, because I know that it's not ending. This is going to keep on with its momentum until the very end of the stream, and I've got to thank every single one of y'all for supporting revived soldiers of Ukraine and helping with such a wonderful cause as to trying to help wounded Ukrainian soldiers who have given so much in defense of their country and the rest of the Western world at least the ability to try and carry out a normal life from then on. And so thank you so much to all of y'all again. And can we get a Leaf Spring Army in the chat for every single one of y'all who has supported this fundraiser and helped us to get people in here who can help revive soldiers of Ukraine. Y'all are all impressive. I heard a tiny little yeehaw come from Matthew, and so thank you to everyone once again. And so, with that, we're now going to be moving into 3 questions from the live chat, and also, due to us not having super chats tonight, we don't have kind of like an automatically created list of questions. And so, it is a free-for-all tonight. If you throw in a question, there might be a high chance it gets answered, because we can answer any question we really pick at this point. And so if you want, please make sure to @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt, type in your question, and then it'll pop up for Matthew and me to see and read, so that way we can then put that in a queue and try and answer it later on. And so with that, we're on to the questions.
All right. And first up, we have a question from General Putnam 2, who says, "Good day, everyone. Please discuss please discuss repercussions, dynamics swamping Moscow right now of Dugin's daughter's assassination. Thank you."
Well, I thank you so much for the great question, and I'm actually going to let's circle back to that one, Matthew. We're going to read off 2 more questions from the live chat and circle back to that before I move on out of this question segment, because that's actually supposed to kind of segue us into the actual segment we're going into. So make sure to ask that one after the next 2, and we will get back to that because we actually have some additional bits to add to that story today here on the news. And so with that, we are on to the next one, but we will circle back to that at the end of this little segment.
All right, and next up, we have a question from Robert Scott, who says, "Are the Ukrainians using any psychological warfare on the Russians, like leaflets or loudspeakers, asking them to surrender and go home?"
Oh, they're using psychological warfare. I haven't heard of specifically like huge megaphones asking people to surrender. We have seen a Ukrainian artillery unit about 2 weeks ago firing off leaflets at the Russians, telling them that the war is lost and they ought to surrender, and here's how. We have seen that before, but we haven't seen anything like the megaphone. But one thing that we have seen is that they are committing a decent amount of psychological warfare, like this hacked TV. We saw this on yesterday's news. And I'll show that to y'all right here. They actually hacked a TV, I guess you could say, station in Sevastopol, Crimea, and started to play Zelensky's speeches and addresses over it for an undefined amount of time. But we do have a little video here showing at least one part of it. And we also saw yesterday, speaking of psychological warfare, that as the giant traffic jam of people began to leave Crimea and cross the Kerch Bridge, one of the electronic signs on the bridge said, "Welcome to Ukraine." Right there. And so the Ukrainians are committing a lot of psychological warfare. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. It's just that it's not on the battlefield. It's more so behind the lines and making sure that, at least mentally, no one's getting a break anywhere from knowing that the Ukrainians are going to retake that land and the Russian army is not safe wherever they are. And so with that, I hope that answers that question. And we are on to the final question of this segment before we circle back to the first one that was asked, and then that will bring us into the next news segment. And so with that, what is the final question of this live chat section?
All right, and the final one of this segment is from Ken Kotuku, I believe it said, who says, "Were there any statement munitions funded by the Leaf Spring Army for Ukraine to send to the Russian aggressors? Slava Ukraine, thanks for your hard work."
And also, Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much for enjoying our work and also putting in a very kind word. We love to hear kind words because we try our best. Now, to answer that question, can you reread the first part of it again so that way I can make sure to answer the exact question?
Yes, just a moment here. I'll make my way back to that question. Let's see. Ken said, "Were there any statement munitions funded by the Leaf Spring Army for Ukraine to send to the Russian aggressors?"
Sadly, there hasn't been. I know that we were going to do the Sign My Rocket thing a while ago, and I have explained this a couple of times, is that once we started to look into the details of actually doing it, we had someone who supposedly was with signmyrocket.com reach out to us over Discord, and they started talking to us, and they honestly didn't really make a great pitch, and things started to look like there was a couple of cracks in the surface with what they were telling us. And then after that, they never really got back with us. And there was a couple of other things that, due to privacy reasons and having a little bit of a duty of care, I'm not going to mention on stream. But there was enough there that we decided maybe it's not a good idea to do that specific one, because we don't really know enough about it, and we're starting to have a lot of questions about its validity, specifically because of that one encounter. So sadly, we haven't done anything like that. I hate to say it, but we do have someone right now in our Discord. Y'all won't believe who it is. It is Psyops himself, which has actually found a website that he trusts, that he's going to pay for a shell to send a message on. And we have a poll in our Discord server asking people what should be put on that artillery shell that will be fired at the Russians. And we have some really funny ones right now. I would show them on stream, but some of them are, of course, a little too inappropriate for stream, but still, they're funny. And I highly suggest, if y'all want to get in on that action, go over to the Discord and make sure to add in your 2 bits on what the inscription on the shell should be. I think it's a really fun one. And Psyops actually deferred the choice to me, but I thought it would be wonderful to make it a Lee Spring Army-wide decision where we actually had a great vote, like an army-wide vote on that, to see what should we put on that shell. And so with that, I hope I've answered that question fairly well, and thank you so much to all 3 of y'all for your incredible questions. Now, Matthew, if you could reread that first one real quick, that will actually bring us into the next segment of news.
All right, and to get back to that first one, which was from General Putnam 2, who says, "Good day, all. Please discuss repercussions, dynamics swamping Moscow right now of Dugin's daughter's assassination."
Now, that is a wonderful question, because that actually does segue us into the next bit of news, because we've gotten more information on that car bombing that occurred in Moscow yesterday. As some of y'all may have known, Dugin's daughter actually was killed in a car bombing. We do have a video, which I'll show one of yesterday's videos real quick, to kind of give a little bit of backstory to some people who may not have been here yesterday to see this news. If y'all do not know, there's a man in Russian called Alexander Dugin. He is supposedly Putin's spiritual advisor, among many other things. Some people call him the Rasputin of modern Russia, which honestly is not that far off base. He has a daughter called Daria Dugin. Well, he had a daughter called Daria Dugin, who apparently also fell into the same line of work as he did, which was pretty much being a neo-fascist in a way, and they've said some incredibly nasty things against the Ukrainian people, and borderlining demanding genocide, and sometimes almost outright saying it. And yesterday, we saw that as Daria Dugin got into her car and turned it on, a bomb exploded, killing her and destroying the car. You can see the fire over there on the side of the street in this video. There's also a second video that we won't show tonight because it was on yesterday's stream, showing Alexander Dugin himself arriving and seeing the burning car that had his daughter inside. We yesterday thought that that may have just been a collateral target. That may have not actually been the target of this sabotage, well, this assassination attempt. It may have been Dugin himself. But as we saw today, with an additional bit of video evidence, apparently his daughter was well into the act as well, much like her father. And here's a clip of her saying some pretty heinous stuff against the Ukrainian people, and also a little bit of a snippet of what her dad says to kind of give you all an idea of who these people really are. So here's the video.
We understand that if we will be not ready to pay all the price for that, we could not gain.
So Ukraine and Syria are all about proving to America that they're not the boss.
Yes, absolutely.
Ukraine, when you see its media posts, when you analyze the Nazis bombing the civilians, you understand that this is like a destructive ideology. So Russia is now creating a new world, which will be the world of justice, and Ukraine was destroying everything. So here we can really feel it on the ground.
And then there's the video from yesterday. Now, to go into this a little bit more, because while that gives you a little bit of an idea that both of them were extremely anti-Ukraine and were just into crushing it, and also trying to send a message to the United States by crushing Ukraine, If we go to, let's actually pull up her specifically to kind of give a little bit more of an explanation to this. Daria Dugina. So let's pull it up. Daria Dugina. See that it's claimed she was a musician, but as you can see right here, she's also a journalist and political activist. So let's go down here and see what she's got to say, at least according to Wikipedia, which is a very summarized kind of like idea. So, after university, she worked as a journalist, writing for the state-controlled media outlet Russia Today and the pro-Kremlin conservative channel Zargrad, using the pen name Daria Platonova. She was affiliated with the International Eurasian Movement and worked for them as a political commentator. And so we go over here. When you see, there's not a lot on the Eurasian movement, but according to Wikipedia, it is a Russian political movement founded in 2001 by the political scientist Alexander Dugin, her dad. The organization follows the Neo-Eurasian ideology, which adopts an eclectic mix of Russian patriotism, Orthodox faith, anti-modernism, and even some Bolshevik ideas. And if y'all know about the Bolsheviks, they weren't really a calm and nice kind of people. The organization opposes American values such as liberalism, capitalism, and modernism. And then as we read on, we can see that according to the United States Department of the Treasury, which added her to the sanctions list that the United States made on March 3rd of 2022, she was the chief editor of a disinformation website called United World International, which itself is state-owned by Putin ally Yevgeny Prigozhin, who also controls the state-backed Wagner Group. Now you can kind of see how these dots are starting to connect, and anyone who is even partially connected to the Wagner Group is not a nice person. Now you can guarantee yourself that off the bat. At the same time, she served as a press secretary of her father. Now, we can see here, moving on, because we got to read the whole story. This whole thing isn't as simple as just one sentence and that's that. We've got to read about what she's done in the invasion of Ukraine as well. Dugina was an outspoken supporter of the invasion of Ukraine. In particular, she claimed that the war crimes against Ukrainian civilians by the Russian army during the invasion were staged. The Bucha Hostomel Irpin massacre, according to her, was staged. Those bodies, in her mind, and what she's telling everyone else, were put there by the Ukrainians. In fact, the Ukrainians committed those atrocities when they rolled back through the area. That's what she's been telling the entire world. And we've been around to see that entire conspiracy theory come to be. And apparently, she was one of the main authors of it. In June 2022, she visited occupied Donetsk and Mariupol. On the 4th of July, she was sanctioned by the British government, which accused her of being a frequent and high-profile contributor of disinformation in relation to Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine on various online platforms. She responded by saying that she is an ordinary journalist and should not have been sanctioned. I would have to disagree with that. If you're connected to the Wagner Group, you're definitely not normal. So, with all that in mind, knowing all of this, and also if you look a little bit more into her, because I did, but I didn't want to include all of these videos today, she has said some pretty nasty stuff, and especially her dad, because sometimes her dad, much like the ambassador to the international, some kind of international organization based in Vienna, he pretty much believes that there should be no mercy against the Ukrainians, and they may as well be lesser people. And I would have to assume, considering that his daughter was following quick in his footsteps, she probably thought and said the same, although I haven't been able to look into that as much as I have her dad. Still, with all of this in mind, it may be the case that this bombing attack on her car was actually, she was actually the target. It wasn't Alexander Dugin, it may have been her. And also, based off of what we've been able to hear today, the Ukrainians did not even commit this attack, surprisingly enough. This car bombing attack was committed by a Russian terrorist organization that has been operating in Russia for quite some while, and if I can remember the name, it's the Free Russian Republican Army. The Free Russian Republican Army. The Russian Liberation Army. Well, actually, that is not the Russian Liberation Army. That would be something else that was in World War II. But it will move to The Guardian. I know that I don't use a lot of mainstream news, but they'll probably explain it fairly well. Just for the sake of this, we'll lift the exception here. A former member of Russia's Duma expelled for anti-Kremlin activities, has claimed Russian partisans were allegedly behind a car bomb which blew up the daughter of one of Vladimir Putin's close personal allies on the outskirts of Moscow. It then goes on to talk about the group a little bit. So as we can see, the actual name of it is the National Republican Army, which kind of got me a little bit confused because it sounds a lot like the Irish Republican Army. And if y'all know anything about Britain's history, it's kind of weird that their name would almost reflect exactly with the IRA's. So now that we know the actual name, the National Republican Army, National Republican Army, let's get a little bit more information on them. So the National Republican Army. Let's see, in Russia, maybe that will give us... No, it looks like the whole entire internet has been so over-flooded with news and information on this, we can't really get any exact details on the National Republican Army, sadly. But as far as we know, they're actually the ones who've committed the attack on Dugin and his daughter, not Ukraine. However, Ukrainian politicians like Zelensky and other leaders in the country are believing that this may be the beginning of Russia's increased activity in Ukraine. One does have to remember that the powers that be, like Putin, have a close personal circle, and considering that Alexander Dugin is pretty much the modern-day Rasputin of Russia, this guy has a little bit of sway, and so Putin may have to try and make some kind of concession to him to show that this loss actually does have an effect on Alexander and keep him in close connection to Putin. Military activities may be heightened in Ukraine, although there's a lot of assumptions involved in that, and considering that it wasn't even perpetrated, as far as we can tell, by the Ukrainians and it was from some Russian terrorist group, that may divert Russia's focus in another direction, which would be domestically. And also, considering that it apparently was, from what we can tell, conducted by a terrorist organization within Russia itself, is now starting to show that the Russians may be losing the control of the lid on their own country domestically, and partisan groups may start to act with all kinds of power, pretty much. Considering that this happened right in Moscow, that's huge. That would be like a car bomb going off in Washington, D.C., which has not happened in an incredibly long time. And so with that, we're now going to be moving down to the southern end of Moscow now that we've talked about that car bombing a little bit, and we're now going to be covering something else. Y'all may remember Tasty's Period, Mr. Lunchtime's favorite restaurant. But one thing that no one's ever considered is that Mr. Lunchtime, too, much like this channel, has a coffee fund. And he's got to get his coffee, but the problem is that Starbucks shut down at the beginning of this war, and has not operated in Russia ever since. So, a upstarting, well, I say upstarting, obviously not an upstarting businessman, an upstarting, quote-unquote, businessman in Russia has decided to take it upon himself to create a brand new coffee shop. And Matthew, if we know anything about how McDonald's was rebranded into Tasties and they pretty much reused everything that McDonald's had left behind, I have a feeling that this restaurant is going to look a lot like Starbucks. So let's take a look at this and let's see what it is. Wow.
Stars Coffee.
Stars Coffee.
Wow. It's wearing a hat with the red star on it.
Well, it's probably just the Russian star, because the Russians, oddly enough, we won't go into that rabbit hole too much, but all they did, because it was a lot cheaper to do this, they would take the red star on all of their military vehicles, like their aircraft, and they would paint a tiny little unnoticeable blue stripe on the red star on its outside, so that way it would look a little different. But it's pretty much the same red star. But still, we're going to let this video play and let y'all see the next ripoff, the next big thing that the Russians have done, which is rip off Starbucks, and now it's called Stars Coffee. It opened up on Thursday, and it's been in operation for the past few days. So let's check it out. It's literally Starbucks. All they did was take the buck out of Starbucks and just push the words together and then said Stars Coffee. Like, you can even see on this crest here that it used to be long enough that it would span from one star to the other and it would say Starbucks. And they just quickly went on to something like Vector, well, not like Adobe Photoshop. Yeah, and just took out the buck and pushed it all together at the top and came up with stars. This is cheap.
They just rearranged the letters outside.
Yeah, look at that. Oh my god, you can. Oh man, this is funny stuff.
Play Scrabble, comrade.
Let's play Scrabble, comrade. I came up with stars, but you're missing the buck. Who cares about the buck? Russia doesn't even have a dollar anymore.
Вот здесь Starbucks ушел вместе с рецептами, вместе с...
Now here goes this guy, and he's about to sit here and pull an absolute, like, scummy explanation. Starbucks left everything behind, and so we just took it and used it. Kind of like they did it with Tasties. It's nothing new. The Russians have been ripping off everyone since these companies left, but they finally got Starbucks now.
Технологии вместе с сырьем полностью. И на его место, именно на адреса, пришел совершенно другой бренд, который выглядит вот таким образом.
A totally different brand that looks like this. Are you kidding me? There's no difference. There's the Starbucks before. There's the Starbucks, like, mug with a little Matryoshka doll on it. And also IKEA left as well. That was something interesting that they pointed out. And also credit to the Wall Street Journal for making this quick little snippet because it was actually pretty good. But still, one thing, well, actually speaking of which real quick, Matthew actually, we've never been to an IKEA. Matthew and me haven't. Matthew actually went to an IKEA like 2 days ago. And it sounded like it wasn't all that it cracked up to be. Apparently you had to walk through the store in a certain way and pretty much walk the whole length of it, which is kind of interesting. But moving on from that, this is quite a ripoff right here. I don't know about y'all, but that just looks like Starbucks without the buck. And it's just like, it literally is ironic in a way because it's just like Russia. It's Russia without the money. It's Starbucks without the buck. Everything in Russia is being simplified and ripped off because they're running out of funds, they're running out of money, and they've even ripped off the Starbucks menu so much that you can even see those little summer paradise drinks or whatever they're called at the bottom of that menu right there. And I don't know if y'all know, I don't know if a lot of y'all go to Starbucks, but I've been looking at these things and I've tried them and they're good. I mean, they're okay. Not really something I'm a big fan of, but that's how much they've ripped them off. Literally the same ingredients and the same, I guess you could say, formulas like this guy says, to everything. It's literally Starbucks. And so with that, we are moving on out of this bit of news from Moscow, which is just showing y'all that how badly things are really going in Russia and how, and also here's another funny thing. Because this is really where I'm trying to go with this little statement here. Russians try and make it sound like they hate the West. They hate everything about the West. They hate McDonald's, they hate Starbucks, they hate everything. Everything. The cars, they just hate it all. But then when they leave, it's like they go through crack withdrawals, and they got to go and get like a very similar ripoff. Like we can't go without McDonald's. We got to have Tasties. We cannot have we got to have Starbucks, although it's not here anymore. So we're gonna rip it off and use everything they have and call it Stars. Like they even have a rip-off Amazon at this point. And the next thing you know, they're going to have a rip-off IKEA probably as well, because out of that trinity that was shown in that video, that's the only one they haven't ripped off yet. And so give it time. The Russians, while they sit there and just swear up and down that they hate everything Western, they're going to try and replace everything that was Western that left with their own stuff because they're going through withdrawals right now. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of Moscow, and we're going to be moving back down to Ukraine to cover the location unknowns. But before we get there, there's actually something I would like to cover here at Makarov, right outside of Kyiv. A lot of y'all may remember that back in the day, this was actually part of the battlefield, and the Russians had reached down pretty much to the E40 highway, which is called the Zhytomyr highway, that stretches from Kyiv all the way to Zhytomyr, further west than Kyiv. This was a battleground for quite a while, along with Borodyanka, and along with Borodyanka and the British Hospital Irpin area, this is a place where loads of war crimes and atrocities were committed by Russian soldiers, and they killed off hundreds of Ukrainians in the streets, gunning them down. Not only that, but the damage was extensive to all of these places. And here in Makarov, we can see that out of the ashes a phoenix rises, as this building that we're looking at here in these pictures was destroyed in April of 2022, and we can see its burned out husk and remains. And it has since then been refurbished and pretty much rebuilt to look like this now. And we can even see that they're having some kind of urikti obochi. Hopefully someone can translate that for me real quick. But honestly, this is shocking to see that they were able to refurbish this building like this. and make it look practically brand new. In fact, Matthew, I think you'll be interested in this. It looks better now than it did before the war. That's what it looked like before the war, and that's what it looks like now.
Yeah, it does look better.
Yeah, it does. And like I've been saying to everyone, once this war is over, and all of these destroyed buildings that are hardly standing are looked at again, they may just begin to refurbish them, and they may get a brand new modern look, just like this building has. And I've got to say, it's honestly quite the upgrade from what they had before. I mean, like, it looks a lot more modern, looks a lot more sleek, and it's good to know that the Ukrainians, even while the war is going on, are still attempting to rebuild like we can see in this picture here. And it shows... Oh, wait, I just saw someone say fruit and vegetables. It looks like... fruity. Oh, boy. Oh, wait a minute, I misspoke. I'm sorry, it's not orkti. It's actually an F at the beginning. That's the letter F in the Cyrillic alphabet. Anyways, it still looks pretty freaking cool. And I have to say, it's nice to know that the Ukrainians are still rebuilding stuff behind the lines well after the war has moved on and that their lives are moving on too. It's a great thing to see. And so now that I've shown that and shown you all that while the war is still going on and a lot of people think that the country has been destroyed and never will recover, some Ukrainian towns like Makarov are starting to blossom anew, and the buildings that were destroyed are coming back better than before. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of that little bit of news into the location unknowns down here in this area. Also, real quick, I actually said we're going to check out Sharivsky Park because I've never actually looked at it, although our location unknowns are always over it. It's always just right on top of it, and I've always wondered, what is it, Sharivsky Park? Here it is, Sharivsky Park. What is this place? Oh, wow, it's like a castle or something. Wow, that is really cool. It's more like a manor or a mansion that's in the shape of a castle. Well, you know, kind of like styled after a castle, but still pretty cool at that. Anyways, moving on from that, let's get to the location unknowns. Starting off today with a little fun one. We've seen the Ukrainian artillery hitting the Russians once more. Oh, let me mute that there. We can see a Russian vehicle going into kind of a Roman candle. And we can see it doing a little bit of simmering, burning, and honestly, it looks like a volcano at this point. It's like it's spewing hot magma. Jeez. I'm not sure if that is a tank. It may be an SPG. We now see a large group of Russian soldiers here in a tree line, bunched up in a large pile, and we all know how that ends. You see right there, it didn't end well. They didn't show us the artillery rounds hitting, but we can all see them taking naps. Now, before we move on to the next one, and of course that was incredible to see that they inflicted that many losses on the Russians in a single instant, we actually did get a request from a viewer a second ago to explain tonight's fundraiser and what it's for. And considering that we're now at $8,609,000, how in the world does that always happen every time I start talking about this? It always bumps up, but I'm never complaining. That is impressive that every time I begin to talk about it, it shoots up leaps and bounds. We just got an anonymous donation of $362 to this fundraiser. And so since we've gotten that, it's the perfect time to explain what it's for again. This fundraiser is for Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. The Revived Soldiers of Ukraine Foundation does a lot of rehabilitation work with wounded soldiers that have suffered some kind of affliction or injury during this war. So it could be anything like a gunshot to the head, an amputated leg, it could be all kinds of things. But if a soldier has been wounded or injured in this war, Revived Soldiers of Ukraine personally undertakes it through funds that are raised publicly, like this fundraiser right now, to help these soldiers pretty much return back to normal life as best as they can. And so I hope that explains the fundraiser fairly well. And also, if you go up to the fundraiser itself, there should be a description on the side of the YouTube video. We'll actually pull up YouTube real quick because I throw down a little explanation every single time we run a fundraiser. So let me hop over here real quick. Show you all this really quickly. Right down here, it says help revive the wounded soldiers of Ukraine. You click show more, and then I put down a little explanation down here saying what Revived Soldiers of Ukraine is and what they do. And also, we can see down here that it revives soldiers of Ukraine also throws in a little explanation about what they do too. So if you ever want to know what the fundraiser is for, that is exactly where you'll find it. And this is also where you'll find the exact total raised, which is right now at $9,015. Just $1,000 away from reaching the $10,000 goal. If we reach that $10,000 goal here in the next 5 minutes, I will be pretty blown away. And we may start to talk about some things again, if y'all see what I'm saying. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyways, with that, we're now back to the location unknowns. And moving on into the next one, we can see LPR soldiers surrendering. I guess the Star's coffee was so putrid and the Tasties so bland, they just decided to hand themselves over.
Стоять автомат на землю!
You can see the soldiers surrendering here.
Пацаны, все хорошо, как и договаривались. Как и договаривались, все хорошо. Все хорошо, как договаривались. Пошли. Руки сюда, пошли.
We now see them running down the road, and that's the end of the video. Quite a quick little grab from those soldiers. It looks like they were taken by surprise a little. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we see the Russians take a prisoner. And this one was kind of weird, and I'll have to point out why it was very weird that this video was made a certain way. We hear a firefight going on, but once again, notice this. During this whole entire video, you will not hear a single shot of return fire. Look, this guy, he walks onto the Russians. Like the Russians didn't hop out of a bush and find him. He walks up to the Russians with his hands up. And also notice this weird fact. Look at his helmet. His helmet's like a grayish-green color, and it's also a certain kind of design. I can't really tell you the exact name, but watch this. They tell him to get onto the ground, and a Russian soldier comes up to secure him. This Russian soldier right here, he's got the same helmet on, the same gear. They're literally capturing a surrendering Russian soldier. That is lame. Like, this is just maximum lameness.
Где третий? Где третий? Уйди, спереди уйди, ты на огне стоишь.
They now tell the supposed prisoners to get up.
Быстрей! Забирай.
They are literally wearing the same vests and the exact same helmet as the Russians that are capturing them, letting you know that those are soldiers probably from the exact same unit, and they've staged this entire thing to make it look like they're taking prisoners. This whole entire video did not make any sense at all. And especially considering that the uniforms literally match up with each other. That would be like a U.S. cop stepping out of his vehicle and telling someone to show their hands, and the guy who steps out of the civilian car is another cop in full uniform going, "Oh man, American law enforcement is tough and they're really cracking down on criminals these days." Like that's fake as all get out, just like this right here.
Держи на огне. Куда нахуй? Дай не води, туда веди. Стой!
Once again, no return fire. It's just them firing into the distance, and that's the end of the video. And in fact, what is this? Oh, wait a minute. Look at this. I just noticed this. The Ukrainian soldiers, the supposed Ukrainian soldiers in this video, come walking out of the brush in front of this guy right here. And at the end of the video, where do the Russians start walking to get away from the front lines? Right back to where those supposed Ukrainians came from.
And Enforcer, real quick, I just saw a viewer in the live chat say that it was actually Happy Dragon said perhaps they are capturing a deserter.
Maybe, but still, that would be kind of odd because they're trying. It sounds like a full-on firefight, and if they were deserters, there wouldn't be a supposed firefight going on in the background. But that may be a pretty decent suggestion. These may be deserters, but at the same time, notice that none of the soldiers in this video, neither Russian nor supposed Ukrainian, are wearing armbands, which shows that they may be off the front lines, and they're trying to ensure that no gung-ho Russian doofus shoots their own guys because they're wearing fake armbands. That could also be another thing, but that is a good point, Happy Dragon. But as far as we can tell, according to the caption that was put on this, footage of Russian soldiers capturing prisoner of war during a firefight in the forest. And so the caption is trying to make it sound like these are Ukrainians that are being captured. Although you do have a good point, it may be deserting Russians. But there they go, walking right back to where these guys came from, which tells you the whole thing was fake. They literally said, enter stage, exit stage. With that, that is the end of this little video, and we are now going to be moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see that Matthew's favorite armored car has made it to the front lines in mass. We saw 20 MRAPs in the single part of the road right here on film. And so here's a video of that, because these things look mean. Unfortunately, I can't play the music, but look at how many of them there are. That is a lot of MRAPs.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. 100, 100, laughing face. This is incredible right here. And these things provide a decent amount of protection, usually against IEDs and mines. That was the whole entire purpose they were made. And so if the Ukrainians ever find themselves having to traverse anywhere that may have IEDs or mines in them, these things will serve a fairly good purpose. And also, they're incredibly resilient for that reason against most small arms fire, and sometimes even some of the lighter anti-tank weapons like a RPG-7. We have seen some MRAPs before in prior conflicts that the United States is involved in using MRAPs with, survive direct hits from RPGs. And so with that, that's the end of that little video right there, and it's wonderful to know that the United States continues to send massive amounts of support to the Ukraine, and Ukraine has an ally in America, specifically for those reasons. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians checking out a smoking bee, MTLB. Now, Russians do have a little bit of a smoking problem, and it appears that their vehicles are even beginning to have a problem with it as well, and Ukrainians are trying to figure out, is smoking good for your health? And they're looking at this MTLB, and the answer is no. When you see them look inside, of course, it looks like a garbage dump in there.
Да, на міні. То гусянка, а це оце попадання РПГ, наверное. Или не, нахуй.
Братан, снимаешь?
Да.
Щелкни, будь ласка, на память. Хотеть ты, сука, пидоросью, как ебать.
Есть, есть.
Да? Блядь, вообще мало будет, блядь, вообще, лет 18. Ну, пизда.
Та й похуй, на нехуй сюди було їздить, блядь.
I like how their first reaction is to get out of the destroyed vehicle and start filming it right immediately.
Well, actually, this is these are the Ukrainians looking at a destroyed Russian vehicle. So they didn't get out of it. They walked
I was about to say.
Yeah, that would be funny if they like got hit and then got out and started walking around doing like a diagnostics on it. But no, these are Ukrainians looking at a destroyed Russian MTLB.
Молодий, не молодий, нахуй.
Well, we can see that pulled orc is on the menu tonight. And so that's the end of the video, and it is pretty great to see that the Ukrainian forces have knocked out another small Russian APC. Those things don't cost much; they're around $250,000 a pop, which in terms of military numbers is not an expensive piece of equipment, but still knocked another one out. And the Russians that were using it are now a little short pressed for vehicles. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the second to last bit of Location Unknown news. And y'all may remember that we've shown some propaganda things that the Russians have done. Well, not really propaganda things. It was more like morale lifting, where they would drive out the deflated tired truck, if you remember that, Matthew. And the people would be singing on the rear of the flatbed truck. And the Russian soldiers looked dead and like they weren't even into it. The Ukrainians ran a charity concert somewhere near the front lines today. And while some of these Ukrainian soldiers were just kind of smiling and listening to the music, some of these guys were into this and like jamming with it. It was actually really fun to watch, and funny in a way, because compared to the Russians, these guys are literally like soaking this up. So here's a video of some Ukrainian soldiers literally being the morale. There's no morale to be boosted here. They are the morale. So here's the video. This man right here is literally Mr. Morale. I mean, like, this guy is into this. Look at him. His neck, his blood vessels in his neck are bulging out. He's like dancing around. This guy is having a good time. This guy is trying to film it, and we can see that everyone in the crowd generally, if you look around, except for this guy, he looks like he may not be having too much of a good time, but everyone else looks pretty happy with this, and they look like they're having a pretty enjoyable time all together. And that's the end of the video, but these guys are vibing. There's no other way to explain it. And this guy right here is literally, like, this fella, like, if you were under an artillery barrage, he would be sitting there cracking jokes and laughing and just having a fun time with it. You can tell. This guy is a whole vibe, if you'd like to call him that. And so with that, that's the end of this little video, and I just thought it was a fun one. I thought it was enjoyable, and also the music sounded pretty good. Unlike the Russian one, this was just some pretty good music to just listen to and enjoy. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this bit of Location Unknown news and into our next and our last bit. And it's now time to go over the Russian casualty statistics for day 179. Let's see what we got. The Ukrainians have done it. The Russians have now lost over 45,000 troops. An additional 300 troops over the past 24 hours, bringing that number up to 45,200. Another 5 tanks destroyed, another 12 armored personnel carriers destroyed, 10 artillery units destroyed, no new MLRSs, no new anti-aircraft systems, planes, helicopters, or boats, but we did see another 3 drones shot down, 2 more special equipment vehicles being destroyed, and 6 more supply trucks being destroyed as well. These are numbers to be happy about. These are numbers to celebrate. All of these destroyed Russian vehicles and knocked out Russian infantry are bringing this war closer and closer to its end. It's weakening the Russian army. Someday we may see the Ukrainians begin to take massive swaths of ground. We may see the Russians entirely back out of this war. And every single day that we see numbers like this building up is another day that reality will come a little bit sooner. And so with that, it is a wonderful thing to see, and I'm seeing a whole bunch going down right now in the live chat with this fundraiser, and we will be touching on that incredibly soon, as a matter of fact, and I just saw one of our channel legends throw in a huge figure. But with that, we're now going to be moving on out of our Location Unknown news and into our Harkiv segment, where we've had a little bit of news to speak of today, which, surprisingly enough, is none. And it's always odd because the Harkiv segment goes through ebbs and flows in a way where we'll get a lot of news on a single day, like 3 bits of video on a single day, which is big for a single part of the front line, and then the next day there will be nothing. And today is one of those days. We've gotten absolutely nothing from the Harkiv front, and we're not sure if that means that there is an absolute stop in activity here. There may still be artillery barrages going on. The Russians are taking losses. It's just that we don't have any video evidence to confirm or speak of either of those things. And so as far as we're concerned, the Harkiv front has fallen silent today, along with Chuhuiv and Balaklia, which is normal. But another odd occurrence is that Izium, which has had one piece of news at least for every single day of this week, has also fallen silent as well. And it's weird, you know, sometimes whole areas of the front line can fall quiet. And yesterday, while we did get news from the Harkiv area and the northern Donbass, we got no news at all from Donetsk and the entirety of the southern front. And now today, it seems like that's happening from Izium to Harkiv. But down here...
And Enforcer, I have to interrupt real quick. We have reached $10,000 on the fundraiser.
Oh! Oh, we reached 10,000. Let's go. 100, 100, laughing face, smiling face. We did it. And I got to thank every single one of y'all in the Lead Spring Army for not only reaching the $5,000 goal, but now we've reached the $10,000 goal. My vocal cords are about to bust out of my neck right now because I'm putting as much into my voice as I possibly can. This is impressive. This is one of the few times over the past few months, around 2 months actually, that we've not only blown over the $5,000 goal, but we've now reached the $10,000 goal. This is impressive, and I've got to thank each and every one of y'all for helping us to get this far in the fundraiser, and they're still coming in. This is impressive. And so with that, I thank all of y'all so much once again for helping us to get this far with tonight's fundraiser, and I hope that we're able to eke out just a little bit more. I'm not going to up the fundraiser goal again. 10,000 is incredibly high, but if y'all want to try and reach for 11 or 12 or maybe even 15, let us know. Actually, I don't know. I mean, like, would they be willing to go up to 15,000? Maybe that's a question we need to ask them. So, Matthew, if you would like to run a poll, let's ask everyone. Should we up it to 15,000? I don't like moving the finish line a lot, but tonight, considering that the Lee Spring Army has unstoppable energy, it is moving at a rapid speed, maybe y'all would like it to go up to 15,000. I don't know. But if we could throw up that poll, we'll see what everyone says, and we'll see how far we can get tonight, because tonight is a night worth celebrating for sure. And so with that,
all right,
we're actually going to be moving on into our next segment of news. But before we do, we're going to take a quick pause to address all of the incredible people who have helped us to get from 5,000 to 10,000 and also answer 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and to recognize our top supporters at the moment, we have a $200 donation from BC Skyman. We have a $100 donation from Baydad 2006. And Alexander Tayutinen. I can't even pronounce that. It's a very complicated last name, but Alexander, thank you very much for that donation. Also, we have another $69 donation from PsyOps, as well as a $250 donation from Khan Azor. Then we have several $50 donations, one from John Webster, NBD, Ed Roycer, Salty Squid, Zwan Tran, and Robert Harrington. So those are the top donations for the moment. So thank you, everybody. Once again, Leaf Spring Army has come through once more, and it looks like that poll is 59% yes and 41% no. So it's a little bit of a closer one. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts on that very simplistic poll?
I'm going to have to be honest. The first one was unanimous. It was like 80% of y'all wanted it to go up to 10. But a lot less of y'all wanted to go up to 15, and I can't understand why. We moved the finish line the first time to 10. We've now reached that one, and so, you know, we don't really want to move it again because we've succeeded tonight far above what we normally do. And so with this one being a lot closer, I think we won't be raising the goal again. If y'all want to go on, it doesn't stop y'all from donating. Y'all can still continue to donate any numbers you want. So if the live chat wants to, y'all can all collectively try and agree on a figure, maybe like $12,000 or $11,000, and see if y'all can reach it. And of course, whatever y'all all kind of unanimously agree to in the live chat, I will support 100%. I'll be trying to hype everyone up so that way we can get on up to 11, 12, 15, whatever y'all would like to do. If y'all can try and get there, I will back y'all up 100%. I've already thrown in $600 thanks to Susan once again for the $500 that she sent over PayPal today and requested, since she could not donate it directly to the fundraiser, that we donate for her. And I also threw in $100 of my very own money, which usually goes towards paying college, car bills, and all kinds of stuff like that. But I, of course, believe in supporting Ukraine. And I think that it's a wonderful thing to do, and that's why I have never stopped doing these fundraisers ever since we were able to. And so please make sure to continue supporting that fundraiser. And I see everyone throwing out some pretty interesting and some pretty crazy numbers. I actually saw someone say 25,000, which I don't think we'll reach that, but still a pretty interesting goal. But anyways, we're now going to address 3 questions from the chat, and after we do that, we'll then be moving on into our last segment of news for the night.
All right, folks, and first up, we have 2 polls to address that were put up a while ago. But before we get to those polls, I'm going to go ahead and do it one more time because it's highly requested, and here we go. Yeehaw!
And that was
there you
a
go.
fine yeehaw.
That was a very clear yeehaw. I actually heard it played back to myself. I have no idea why, but it's pretty cool. Also, real quick, let me recognize a $50 donation from Magic Sky Girl, who just put that donation into the fundraiser, and also Richard Bray, who put in a $20 donation. So thank you very much to both of you. And moving on to our first poll, the question was, do you believe the assassination of Dugin's daughter was intentional? It looks like 64% of you said no, Dugin was the intended target, and 36% said yes, she was the intended target. So it appears the majority of you believe that Dugin was actually the target of that hit, but instead the daughter got it instead. So very interesting results. I also believed that Dugin was the intended target, and she just happened to get in the vehicle. But one thing I heard somebody ask today is what type of car bomb was it? Was it on a timer? Was it on a detonator? I'm not sure if we have that information yet.
Sadly, we don't have that kind of information. I'm assuming that it was most likely an ignition-started bomb, where if you turn the key or turn the car on, the bomb then goes off, but I don't really have enough information to know that. I would assume, though, that it was, considering that someone got in the car and then it exploded. So, with that, we're now going to be, well, actually, let me address that poll real quick before we move on to the next one. I would have to say, honestly, that I'm kind of undecisive on that one. I don't know if she was the primary target and that was supposed to send a message to Dugin and everyone else in the government, or if Dugin was the primary target and then his daughter got it instead. I'm not really sure. So at this point, if I would kind of have to lean more so towards I'm undecided at the moment, actually. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Also, wait a minute, hang on. I forgot this. If it was a lot of Neva, it may have not even been a car bomb. It may have just been that the car was shoddy quality. But with that, we're now moving on into the next poll.
All right, and that next poll, and the question was, do you think the rebranded Russian McDonald's and Starbucks will last? And rebranded is being very generous, more like the ripoff Russian McDonald's and Starbucks, or what is it called? Starbuck. What was the name of the new one?
Stars.
Stars, that's right. Stars Coffee. The good old Stars. But anyways, the results were 51% said no, they will run out of supplies. 25% said yes, they will get new supplies. And 22% said nobody will want to eat there. And I was actually torn between nobody will want to eat there and they will run out of supplies, because I highly doubt that McDonald's or Starbucks will be sending new replenishments anytime soon.
I actually would have to agree. I don't think they're sending replenishments anytime soon, and so the Russians will most likely have to start sending in shoddy quality stuff to try and replace it with, and it won't taste at all like what it originally was, and then that'll eventually lead to its decline, most likely, or Russians will cope until the Western companies return, and then those companies will fall flat on their face. And even at that, that might stop these companies from ever going back to Russia, considering that that's what the Russians did to them. You know, it's pretty much just replace them and try and run these rip-off, knockoff companies that are clearly stealing pretty much all of their materials that they paid for and own and started using it themselves. So, kind of a lot of questions there, but honestly, I feel like they will eventually flop. That's almost a guarantee. So with that, now that we've addressed that poll, we're now going to move on to the first question of this segment.
All right, and the first question goes to Jeff Stewart, who says, is the injection of Slavic Russians into occupied lands as a Russian Bantustan? Bantustan equals any area where people are forced to live without full civil and political rights.
Can you reread that one again and kind of explain what it means to me? Because I think I kind of lost it due to how it was read.
All right, Jeff said, is the injection of Slavic Russians into occupied lands as a Russian Bantustan? Bantustan equals any area where people are forced to live without full civil and political rights.
I would say that's kind of a tough question for me to answer, because I'm not sure if it's how Matthew's reading it or how the question was phrased, but I'm having a hard time understanding how the first segment of the question and the second segment kind of tie together. But to answer it the best I can, I would have to say that it most likely would be considered Bantustan, because if they are funneling Russians into these areas and trying to Russify them, or pump up the numbers of Russians that are there so that way they can kind of quell the Ukrainians in a way, I would say it probably is like that, because there is definitely no police force there. It's entirely operated by the military, kind of like a military district. And so in my opinion, to answer that question, I would have to say it's most likely a Bantustan. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for an interesting question. I just think it was kind of a little bit hard for me to understand for some reason. It may just be me. And so with that, on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Philip Fixes, who says, Enforcer, do you think that rather than an offensive, Ukraine will just make the cost of the war too high for Russia, forcing a withdrawal?
Yes, that is actually something that I've been considering for quite some time. I was actually having to think about that because I was trying to do something else on the second monitor over here. But to answer that, I think that may be Ukraine's goal at this point, because if y'all notice, the counterattacks don't really secure a lot of ground. And on top of that, they're inflicting large amounts of casualties on the Russians as it is without having to conduct counteroffensives. And so by that alone, they could just defeat the Russians by grinding down their forces, their supplies, and their economy until they can't wage a war any longer. That did happen in World War I. If we look back at the Western Front map on November 11th, and let's go to Google Images, and I'm going to show you all this because this is something important. So let's see here. This is Belgium. This right here is France. This is Luxembourg. And this is Imperial Germany by and large. And we can see here that the front line, near around November 11th, 1918, while being pushed back incredibly far, a decent amount of it was still in French land. And a decent amount of it, well, most of it was still in Belgium. In fact, a massive amount of it was in Belgium. And so, with that in mind, you can kind of get the idea. Let me see if I can find a better map of that. Man, that's not a good one. Maybe this one? And that's... let's see. Yeah, I mean, like, it's okay. It doesn't really show the borders of the countries all too well. But a decent amount of the front lines were still in France by the end of World War I. And so the Allies in that war didn't have to push the Germans out of the country to win the war. They just had to inflict enough casualties and losses combined with a pretty large offensive at the very end to make the Germans see that the war couldn't really go on any longer. And on top of that, there was also a whole bunch of stuff going on in Germany internally. There were coups, riots, and pretty much brand new breakaway countries being formed. I believe there was one called the Spartacus Republic or something similar to that. It was, I believe, a communist uprising in Bavaria. I forgot the exact name for that group. But that kind of gives you an idea that the Russians don't have to be pushed all the way out of the country for them to eventually have to sign some kind of peace agreement and withdraw. It could just be that their forces are whittled down so bad and their economy and everything on the home front is so bad off that continuing the war is practically impossible for them without their nation ceasing to exist by the end of it. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And real quick, this does not count as one of the questions. I'm just seeing multiple people ask, have we reached 500,000 total donations on the channel yet?
No, we have not. I think right now, as of tonight, we are around $412,000. So we're well on our way. Well, not really well on our way. We're starting on our way towards 500,000. But right now, it's hovering more around 400,000. But each week, we chip away another usually 8,000 to 7,000. Each fundraiser, but tonight is a huge one. We've gotten all the way up to 10,000, and we're probably getting really close to 11 right now. So I'm pretty excited about that. And one thing I really want to see one day, I think this would be the most impressive thing, and I'm trying to figure out ways to make this possible, is that I want to have a $100,000 fundraiser. We've got all the way up to 54,000 one time, but I want to actually reach the $100,000 figure on a single fundraiser for a single nonprofit. I think that would be impressive. It would be bragging rights for every single one of the Lee Spring Army soldiers who have been here since the beginning, and I think it would just be impressive for all of us to do, and it would show that we are not anyone who's just playing a little hopscotch game out here with the fundraisers and the donations. We are actually covering massive ground in support for Ukraine. And so eventually I do want to make it to just a single whopping $100,000 fundraiser. I don't know if that will ever happen. The way things are right now, it usually is around 10,000. So it would have to take an act of God for it to get up to $100,000 in a single night over the course of a few hours. But I want to get there one day. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we'll be moving on into our final bit of news.
And also, shout out to Ed Roycer for putting in another $50 donation to the fundraiser. And a big shout out to Ed. He has been putting in a lot of support of our charity of the night. And thank you very much for your generosity. And moving on to the final question of this segment. We actually have our 3 decoders of the stream, WFTU, Mark Hodges, and C. Fay, who have figured out the Morse code of the night. Who says, Enforcer, message number 1 is warehouse in Volnovaka Donetsk Oblast, and message number 2, Ukraine will never die. And then he puts in the Ukrainian version of it.
Well, thank you so much for decoding that message again, and you are correct. You actually did point out the little ammunition depot that I'm assuming is an ammunition depot in Volnovaka. I put it down as right here because it seems like a building that would be conducive to it, and from what we could tell, there may already be trucks there, although I can't really tell for certain. But still, great job decoding once again. You did get the coordinates correct, and also you did get the message correct. It was a very short one tonight because I wanted to make it not too long, because sometimes I see people going, the beeping, and so it just said Ukraine will never die, and I don't think they will. They will continue to live on well after this war as a free and independent nation. And so with that, thank you to all 3 of y'all once again for deciphering those messages every single night, and we've now reached the end of this question segment and are entering our last news segment of the night, starting off outside of Lyman, where we can see a Russian armored personnel carrier being hit by some pretty accurate Ukrainian fire. Now this is what a Russian advance really looks like. It looks like Hell Rider. Here's the video.
Hello, darkness.
And I gotta mute that, but you got a pretty good idea what the music is. And that little BMD is just, goodness me. I don't think it's going to be advancing much further, but it's trying. Boy, wouldn't you hate to be in that rolling dumpster fire? That's the end of the video, and that thing was it was traveling a pretty good bit. That was actually pretty interesting to see. But with that, moving on out of the Lyman area, that doesn't really show that any offensives are happening in this area. It was largely quiet today, and we haven't gotten a lot of information or reports showing that ground has been covered. And so, unfortunately, while that is an interesting loss, it is just still the... I guess it's just the way it is there. It's an interesting kill by the Ukrainians, but it's not really showing that anything's changed exactly. However, in the area of Bila Orivka, we saw that the 503rd Separate Marine Battalion was able to track down a couple of Russians and call in some artillery on them and give them a little bit of their own medicine, which is called fire. The Russians enjoy fire. Usually, they don't ever see fire. Fire is far too expensive to make in Russia. Fire is just something that's unaffordable for most and a luxury for the oligarchs. They usually feel fire after they get done binge drinking vodka every night and get up in the morning to go to the loo. So usually they know what fire is like, and it looks like they're getting a little bit of this fire medicine by the 503rd Marine Brigade, which, of course, Matthew
honey badger.
It's Stoffel the Honey Badger.
Hey.
Hey. We now see the Russians running around the ruins of this destroyed village. Wow, wait a minute. We just passed 11,000?
Wow, we did.
When did we do that?
I think just a second ago. It looks like, I think OK put us over that. He put in a $5 NZ donation.
Well, we're all the way up to 11,991 now.
Maybe they're rolling in slow. I can't see them. They're not popping up.
Where in the world was that one? There was a huge one that apparently came in. Where was it? I don't see it. I mean, like, I went all the way up to the last one I looked at the end of the question segment, and I didn't see it. But anyways, with that, we can see that the
12,000.
Oh, we reached 12,000!
Wow, something's going on, but we've reached 12,000.
The eagle has landed. The eagle has landed. We've reached $12,000. And I'm wondering if we can make it to 13 now, because I never even saw us go from 10 to 12, and now we're already at 12.
Enforcer, it was right after we mentioned Stoffel the Honey Badger. All of a sudden, we jumped up to 12,000.
Maybe Stoffel the Honey Badger is the solution to this whole thing. So let's see.
Yes.
Stoffel, Stoffel, Stoffel. If we say it 3 times into the mirror, maybe it'll get up to 13. Maybe. So with that, we're going to let this video continue, and we can see that the artillery from the Ukrainian 503rd Brigade is raining dead onto these Russians and taking them out. Unfortunately, they don't get fundraisers for their version of Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. These guys have just got to cope. And so with that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are still inflicting casualties on the Russians outside of Lysychansk. Now, moving out of the Seversk area in general and moving all the way down to Bakhmut, we've actually gotten two bits of news from this area of the front line today. First, we saw that the Ukrainians were hitting the Russians. This is something that's not new to anyone here, but it's still nice to see. So here's that video. They're playing music in it, so we have to keep it muted. And we can see the Russians moving around this house in the forest. We see some arrows pointing to where they are. And now a artillery shell has wound down right onto the spot, exploded, and most likely taken a decent amount of them out. Dirt naps for all is the motto of the Ukrainian infantry units, and it looks like they just keep on giving everyone a nice dirt nap. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of this bit of news into Bakhmut itself, where we can see that the Ukrainians have done something crazy today. They took down a jet with an Igla manpad. Here's that video. I have to mute it, but you can see the little red dots that are circling the planes. And for once, the red circles in the video are actually really helpful because we can see the aircraft. We can see the Igla being prepared to fire. And he's just waiting for the right moment. And it's on the way. The Igla is now traveling towards the aircraft. See them firing off more of these missiles towards the Russian jets. And finally, they see the smoldering wreckage of a Russian aircraft in the distance and the remnants of the plane on the ground. The two things we need to confirm that that aircraft was in fact destroyed, and it lets us know that the Russian Air Force not only has to worry about the Ukrainian air defenses like the Buks and the Kubs, but now they have to worry about the simple Igla shooting down their best aircraft in the Russian Air Force. That's if they can even take off from their airfield after it's been attacked by Ukrainian attack missiles landing right onto them. So the Russian Air Force is having a pretty tough time. So with that, we're now going to be moving out of the Bakhmut area as well. While those two bits of news are incredible to see, it doesn't suggest that the Russians are reaching any closer to Bakhmut, which is great news. Moving down into the area near Orlivka, we did see that an ammo dump was hit and blew up today after Ukrainian fire slammed into the critical parts that were storing ammunition. Here's the video of that ammo dump burning. A nice rolling fire. This is what you usually use to smoke hams. That right there is what you usually do during a fireworks show, is pop off little Roman candles at each other and hope that you don't smack someone's eye out with it. That's the end of the video, and it's great to see once again that the Ukrainians are still inflicting massive damage on Russian supplies. Moving well behind the lines of the Ukrainian side, we also saw a Ukrainian Buk firing into the sky at Russian aircraft. We're not sure what kind it was. According to the caption, it was a UAV, so I'll take its word for it. The Buk is now well on its way and reaching the target. Boom, goes the dynamite. And that was another Russian drone destroyed. Pretty nice. I don't know about y'all, but I like it. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk area in general, as we don't have any more news to speak of from the front lines. It looks like the front lines have once again fallen completely silent, because there's just not a lot coming from them anymore. However, on the southern front, we did get a little bit of additional news. Starting off at the furthest east side of the southern front, we saw the 98th Brigade get into a little bit of firefight that was filmed from drone, which is very rare. We're going to have to mute it due to the music. But we can see the soldiers here in the trenches, looking out to the distance. We can now see them looking over and firing at where there may be Russian soldiers. We now see them moving forward through the trees and the underbrush. And we see this guy's got a pretty nice scope on his AK. and also a silencer. This guy's really got his AK kitted. Well, that's the end of the video, and it's still pretty interesting to see the firefight unfold here on the southern front. Moving on into our next bit of news, we can then see another battle on the southern front, this time from the 3rd SOF Regiment, and this one, I believe, was actually filmed by drone, and we can see the Ukrainian units moving up to the next tree line in the battle. So here's the video. And let me just make sure I got this correct. Took control of a Russian UAV, and the Zaporizhian landed it behind their lines to be recovered. Drone data on video captures recent footage of battles in the area. So apparently this is actually a Russian drone that the Ukrainians have captured, and this may be video footage of the Ukrainians firing at the Russians or the Russians firing at the Ukrainians. We don't really have a good idea as to who's doing what. But we can see that tank fire into the center of that field, and now back towards the tree line. We now see the drone looking around, and we can see another impact there in the field. And we can now see the Russians, as we can see they have Z's marked on. These are some very crappy looking Russians. Mostly they hardly have any equipment. But we can see them here all marveling at their drone, and then not long after it was captured by the Ukrainians. Pretty interesting to see, and it's good to know that the Russians are losing drones with valuable information on them left and right all over the place. We actually had an instance of that happening yesterday. And so with that, we've now covered the news that's occurred everywhere around the world and in Ukraine for today. So we're now moving up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Zelensky here on day 179 of the news, which will be wrapping out this entire fundraising streams news segment. After that, we'll be moving on into our question segment, where we'll be answering as many questions as we can for the rest of the night. And so, without further ado, here's the address from President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is rocking a traditional Ukrainian tunic. And so, let me unmute this real quick, and here's his speech for the day.
Українці, українки, всі наші захисники і захисниці. Починається 180-й день нашої оборони і новий тиждень. Тиждень, якого ми чекаємо щороку, бо це час головного нашого свята – свята України, Дня Незалежності. І цей тиждень окупанти точно не чекали таким. Вони уявити не могли, що і зараз, і через півроку такої жорстокої війни ми будемо на своїй землі і у своїй столиці відзначати нашу незалежність. Але це так, це наша земля, це наша незалежність, яку нікому не зламати і нікому не відібрати. І ви знаєте, що це так. Кожен і кожна в Україні це відчувають. 180 днів, майже півроку, абсолютна більшість наших людей не сумніваються, що ми дійдемо до перемоги України. Ми об'єднані, ми впевнені у собі. Зараз найбільше за багато десятиліть. І у цьому одна з основ нашої міцності, нашої сили. А отже, це одна з головних мішеней для російських терористів. Вони б'ють по відчуттях українців, по ранах, у наших душах, наших людей, так само, як і по наших містах. Жорстоко б'ють, цинічно, але іншою зброєю. І не тільки пропагандою, і не тільки брехнею. Знущання над людьми, над усіма. Кому найболісніше, найскладніше – це один із страшних засобів тиску, який для Росії став буденністю. І зараз у засобах масової інформації достатньо повідомлень про те, що у Маріуполі готуються декорації для абсолютно гидкого, абсурдного судилища над українськими захисниками, над нашими воїнами, які в полоні у окупанта. Що б там не думали собі окупанти, що б не планували, реакція нашої держави буде абсолютно зрозумілою. Якщо це мерзенне судилище відбудеться, якщо наших людей порушення усіх домовленостей, усіх міжнародних правил заведуть в ці декорації, буде знущання, це буде тією лінією, за яку будь-які переговори неможливі. Росія сама себе відріже від переговорів. Не буде більше розмов, нашою державою все сказано. Усі партнери України поінформовані про те, що може готувати держава-терорист за цей тиждень. Сьогодні я говорив з президентом Макроном про усі загрози. Президент Туреччини Ердоган також поінформований про все це. Генеральний секретар ООН впевнений, теж буде реагувати. Вони та інші світові лідери отримали від нас відповідні сигнали. Усі все розуміють. Розуміють, що роблять окупанти і чим це загрожує. І розуміють, що Україна не стане цього терпіти. Не стане терпіти знущання з людей, про яких можна сказати тільки одне. Вони герої своєї батьківщини. Вони захищали свободу свого народу від загарбників на своїй землі. Навіть у час війни мають бути правила. Сили світу точно вистачить, щоб поставити під владу цих правил будь-яку державу, будь-якого терориста. Ну а всі ми, всі українці, маємо пам'ятати одне. Що б не було, наша мета – це перемога. Що б не було, йдемо до перемоги, попри все. Що б не було, слава усім нашим воїнам. Україна понад усе. Слава Україні.
And with that,
Slava Ukraine.
that is the end of President Zelensky's speech, and Slava Ukraini. And so with that, we have now reached the end of the news segment for the night, and we have absolutely floored this fundraiser. We have reached $12.3 thousand right now, as of this point in the stream, of $10,000 raised. That was our goal. We originally had a $5,000 goal, and within 40 minutes, we had already gotten to $6,000. We then raised it to $10,000, and then the Lee Spring Army went and achieved the $10,000 goal. I then said we wouldn't raise the goal any further, but if y'all wanted to have a goal of your own, please go and try and reach it. I saw most people in the chat agreed that the goal ought to be $12,000, and now we've reached $12,300. All three goals, two officially set and one set by the live chat itself, have all been reached. And so I have one question, and I have to ask this because Psyops is an incredibly cool person who's been watching our channel for an incredibly long time, and he wants this fundraiser to get to $13,000. And I'm wondering if the Lee Spring Army can push just a little bit more. It's just right there on the horizon. Can it make it to $13,000? If it can't, I'm not going to hold it against y'all. Y'all have reached 3 goals tonight, even one that y'all set yourselves. And if y'all can't reach 13,000, I completely understand. But if y'all did reach $13,000, Psyops would flip. Remember, Psyops is an Oklahoman. Don't do him bad. And so with that, we're now going to be recognizing our top donors in between this, the last question segment and this one. And after we do that, we'll then be talking about a couple of the polls and also answering as many questions as we can before we wrap up tonight's stream. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. In our last two top donors of the night, at least for now, are Blue Flam 777, who puts in a $50 donation, and Shannon Jane, who puts in a $50 donation as well. And that is all of our top donors for the moment. So thank you very much for your very generous support. And thank you to all who have donated either small or large to the fundraiser tonight. Your generosity has gone a very far way and has helped us reach $12,000. And also, Kaltenberg just put in a $200 donation. So very generous of him. And Kaltenberg is a very generous person on the fundraiser nights. He always comes through, and thank you very much for that. He also still has COVID, so he's still here and sticking out for Ukraine, even while he has COVID. So big thanks to you, Kaltenberg. And also, let's see, I thought I saw one more. It looks like we have a $5 donation from Andrew Reese, as well as Anonymous still coming through with those $20 donations. And also Captain 80 Swedish puts in a $5 donation.
And we've actually gotten to $12,569 on the fundraiser so far. And so we're actually beginning to round the corner up towards $13,000. We're now only $391 away from $13,000. This is incredible. Also, another thing is that someone has actually asked, what is the biggest fundraiser we have ever run? And I'm over here on my second window and looking at these something like 24 or 25 fundraisers we have run. And the biggest one we've ever had was for Doctors Without Borders, and it was $52,811.36. So we've gotten incredibly high before. The second highest one after that, I believe, is around 36,000. Let me go through and check real quick. It is it's $34,604, and that was actually for Revived Soldiers of Ukraine, and I think that was the first one we ran for them. So pretty high results, actually. We've gotten pretty far there. And so with that, oh, also thank you for blocking that one, Matthew. I was about to get him, and then I saw you did it, which kind of threw me off for a second.
We're just mere puppets here, raising $12,000 to help victims of a war. We're just mere puppets.
We're just puppets. I mean, like, we are just terrible people. I mean, like, we are just through and through the worst kind of people on earth. There are people out there who want others to believe that, and it's just, it's sad, honestly. I actually, just letting y'all know, not going to get into too much details about it. I was actually told that some of the people who were a part of the Great Schism, and if you're into channel lore, you'll know what the Great Schism is. About 150 days after the schism happened, they are still on a Discord server of their own to this day, hating on me and saying all kinds of defamatory things against me. And it's honestly hilarious to think that they hate me that much and would say that many things about me, and I've done this, and I do this weekly, something like this, and what have they done rather than try and bring this down? That's honestly hilarious to me, and I was just thinking about that right then when that guy said, we are all puppets, because if I'm a puppet, I must be Pinocchio or something, because I'm a real boy! And so with that, we're on to the questions.
All right, and real quick, we have two more large donations to cover. We have a $69 donation from PsyOps, as well as a $50 donation from BC.
Whoa, wait a minute, we just reached 13,000! Yeah! Let's go! 100, 100, laughing face, smiling face, but let's go! Oh my god, we've reached $13,008. We did it! We reached the 2 goals we set, we reached the 12,000 goal the live chat set, and now we reached the $13,000 goal that PsyOps set. We are going absolutely bonkers in the freaking fundraiser in the chat, and it's all thanks to y'all. I gotta say thank you all to every single one of y'all so much again. This has been an exciting night, and I've absolutely loved running this fundraiser and trying to help out Ukraine as much as we can through Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. And so with that, we are moving on with that massive voice crack into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and moving into the questions to hop off that very enthusiastic segment there, we have a question from Lawrence Wells, who says, do you think the Ukrainians are blocking off supplies and weakening the Russian Air Force, also carry on shelling and make the Russians use up their ammunition and then push?
Yes, I would have to say that they are definitely weakening the Russian Air Force through their attacks on the air bases in Crimea, and they're also attacking Russian supply lines and supply depots very methodically. They're going across the entire front line and trying to weaken their supply lines and also their air support as much as possible. And in the modern world, of course, supplies have always mattered. That's been something that's been a constant throughout wars since the beginning of time. But the Air Force is something brand new and is usually considered a winning factor these days in war. And if you go back and look at the Gulf War and other wars that the United States has been involved in over the past 60 years, for the large part, air power was largely how we would do fairly well in these wars and usually inflict massive amounts of casualties while really taking none in return. And so it looks like the Ukrainians are destroying those two deliberately, maybe in an attempt to make sure that the Russians really don't have a spine to stand with when these counterattacks finally begin. Because without any air power to support the ground troops, and the Russians are having to rely entirely on artillery, and the artillery might not be functioning because it's lacking supplies, and also the frontline units will be lacking supplies as well, there wouldn't be a lot to stop the Ukrainians from pushing them back at that point. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Anthony Riley, who says, Enforcer, what would be happening to the money that Russia would be getting from its grain and fertilizer sales under the agreement?
What would be happening with that money? It's kind of an odd thing weird thing to answer because it gets deeply involved in how that money will be divvied up. Of course, it has to be paid out to the people who did the work, who gathered up the grain, then loaded it and shipped it. But a decent amount, well, not a decent amount, but probably a considerable sum will be given to the Russian government as kind of a part of tax money. It may not be now, it may be in the future, but still the Russians will have that to rely on to then pay for things in the war. I don't think it'll be an exorbitantly high amount, but it may be enough to raise another tank battalion or a tank company, or even if they have the technology, the ability to raise another one. I'm not entirely sure how they would use that money and where it would go, so unfortunately I'm going to have to declare ignorance on it beyond the answer I've kind of given, which kind of just explains that not all of those sales in terms of profit in dollars is going to go straight to the Russian Federation's government. It's most likely going to have to go to others, and then a little bit will be left for the government. And so with that, I hope that does answer that question. We're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Packrat, who says, did you guys see the new and improved anti-tank gun vehicle Ukraine built, putting two different military vehicles together?
Yes, we did. We actually saw that, and that was a really cool one. If you're talking about that MTLB with a 100mm gun on top, let me see if we can pull up a picture of that. MTLB with a 100mm gun. There's got to be a picture of this thing. Oh, yeah, there it is. We found it. This thing, the monstrosity. You can see here that here's a picture of the East German army in a military parade, and you can actually see that these 100mm guns are supposed to be carried behind the MTLB, but the Ukrainians got pretty smart, and they said, you know what, why in the world go through all of that effort of having to unhook that anti-tank gun from the MTLB, then spin it around and fire it? Why not just put the thing in the MTLB and use it from there? And so that's what they did. And so we have seen this. We actually showed a video of this, and it is incredibly cool. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of this thing. It's probably not incredibly effective, but it's incredibly creative and ingenuitive, especially considering that it completely removes the whole shoot and scoot side of things as far as unlimbering the piece. All you have to do is drive that MTLB up to the front, and it pretty much acts like a tank destroyer. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, because we did see that. And so with that, on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Michael Frankowiak, who I believe is pronounced that way. But Michael, if I'm butchering your last name, please forgive me. And Michael says, who will the hitman in Russia target next?
The hitman in Russia, ooh, that's a tough one, because it's a little like terrorist group in Russia. I think they would continue to target lower end leaders, maybe go for a high end one, but those rarely ever succeed historically, just for some reason. I would have to say most likely you're going to keep on going for lower end political officials, most likely people in the Duma, if I had to make an assumption. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least as far as I'm able to in my abilities. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you, excuse me, once again, for a pretty good one. That was actually an interesting one. Sadly, I'm not in their head, so unfortunately I don't know what they would do next. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Psyops, who says, will the destruction of the Kerch Bridge be the end of Putin?
The destruction of the Kerch Bridge will be the end of the Southern Front in this war, because the Russians won't really have any way to support anything out here. Because imagine it like this. Y'all know about how blood vessels can be blocked in the body, a clot can be made, and everything downwind of that clot could die. You know, it starts, I believe, necrotizing, I guess is the term for it. And so it just dies off. And that's what would happen to this whole entire area of the front if the Kerch Bridge was destroyed, because the supplies would have to travel an unholy length across Ukraine, southern Ukraine, which wouldn't really be feasible, because it wouldn't be carried by rail, it would be carried by road. It would put a massive strain on Russian logistics, and it just really wouldn't be possible for them. And so in that regard, if the Kerch Bridge was destroyed, that would be a crushing blow to Russia's military operations in the south. They would most likely get floored down there. And then that may be the end of Putin and the end of the war, because the loss of ground would be at such a fast pace, it would look like the Russians would never recover, and they most likely wouldn't. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. At least in my opinion, that's largely based off of assumptions of my own, off of my own personal knowledge. So take it with a grain of salt, but that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And next up, we have a question from Duncan VR, who says, with the new long-range missiles Ukraine now has, is Russia's days numbered as to how long they can keep invading? Wait
a minute, that was Duncan, wasn't it?
Yes, he hadn't put in a chat in a very long time, and he got in his little sheep noises again.
Yeah, as soon as I heard bah, I was like, he did it. He did the thing. But anyways, moving on from that and answer the question, Duncan, I think that the long-range missiles, if they are ATACMS, GROMs, whatever they are, they're long-range missiles. now that the Ukrainians have them and they're using them in mass, the Russians' time is nigh. There's no way that they can continue to go on, considering that the Ukrainians are using these missiles to attack the two things they have never been able to outright attack in this war until now: the Navy and the Air Force. They're going after both of them, and with that now being the targets of the Ukrainians, and nothing in the Russian military is safe, because up until now, all Russian air losses were happened because the Russians considered them acceptable casualties. They sent them out to the front line, and if they were lost, it was a part of combat operations. Now they're being lost on the ground, and ships in the Black Sea Fleet can now be attacked at port. And so with those two things in mind, now the Navy and the Air Force isn't safe, and they've been safe during this entire war. And so I do think there is going to be massive changes now that the Russians are having to consider that as well, because that adds two brand new dimensions to this entire war and how the Russians are going to have to fight it. And they can't even master the army side of things, and so I would guarantee they will definitely not master the naval or air force side of things now that those are under threat as well. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And thank you once again, Duncan, for an incredibly interesting question. You haven't thrown in a super chat or a question that I've heard of for quite some while, and it's really cool to hear a great question from you again. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, a big shout out to MMC for putting in a $100 donation to the fundraiser. And just so everybody knows, we are currently sitting at exactly, well, actually, I can't see the exact amount. Maybe the enforcer can see it.
I can see it, and it's $13,145. And just in case you all don't know, there are 46 minutes left until this fundraiser closes. So if y'all want to throw something in, it won't be around tomorrow. It will only be around for the next 45 minutes at this point. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from T-Killa GTI, who says, Enforcer, does Lukashenko leaked war maps accidentally on the beginning of the conflict? Or was it in purpose to make Belarus able to not join this war?
No, it was entirely by accident, because you could tell by the look of the commanders on that video, they were all shocked he had done something that stupid. So in that regard, to answer that one in a very short way, that was entirely accidental by Lukashenko, and that was no way for them to get out of the war. That was just him being stupid. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and I'm glad that you were attentive to that, because that was a long time ago, but it's still funny to this day. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on, we now have a question from Hamlet Taco, who says, any word on how the Russian and Chinese war games are going? Is this something we should be eyeballing?
Well, from what I've heard, the Russian and the Chinese war games are fairly well. Russia is dominating right now with Escape from Tarkov, and also some other games like World of Tanks, which is also from Russia as well. And so they're winning the war game side of things, but the Chinese, they're also trying to step forward. Although, by and large, the government in Beijing doesn't really like games, specifically video games in general, and so they're largely trying to dissuade their youth from doing that kind of stuff as a hobby and into other stuff. And so I hope that explains how the war games are going in between Russia and China, because the Russians right now are absolutely dominating that sector of entertainment. And getting past the joke, I don't really know how the war games are going. We don't get a lot of news on that, so unfortunately I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a question from Robert S., who says, any idea what the total amount of seized Russian money is to this date, roughly?
Seized, sadly, I wouldn't know. We know that they've seized a decent amount of yachts, and we also know that they've seized a decent amount of Russian assets in banks around the world. The Swiss actually froze like $1.5 trillion of Russian assets in their banks. But then again, I don't really know the exact figure. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. But thank you for an interesting question. And with that, we are on to the next one. I actually saw a lot of people saying World of Tanks is from Belarus. Actually from Belarus, which might as well be Russia with how they're connected and how they do things in tandem. But I still see what y'all are saying. We will correct that. World of Tanks is not from Russia. It is from Belarus. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from DL Hemingway, who says, is there a Russian version of Tokyo Rose, Lord Haha, Hanoi Hannah?
Is there a Russian version of those people is what he's asking?
Yes.
Steven Seagal would be the best one, in my opinion. He's literally Hanoi Hannah just in modern form. And so with that, I hope that answers that question. That was actually a real quick one for me to think on, but it's Steven Seagal, and he's really sucks at his job. And so with that, we're on to the next one. I hope we answered that fairly well.
In up next, we have a question from Stan M, who says, news article claims that Russia claims Ukraine poisoned Russian soldiers. Do you have any more information on that?
We do. We do. It happened a long time ago, but apparently a Ukrainian grandmother fed Russian soldiers pies that were poisoned with arsenic. So it did happen at a time, at least that was the story, but we never got any video or picture evidence to confirm this stuff, so it's just kind of like a wives' tale right now, and we don't really know if it was true or not, but that's kind of the story we got a long time ago. I mean, that was like 120 days ago. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one.
In up next, we have a question from Chris Kaufman Jr., who says, what will be the consequences of Russian agents attacking Albania?
Russian agents attacking Albania. I haven't heard about Russian agents attacking Albania, but now that you brought it up, I know I'm about to be pissed. We're going to take a look at the capital of Albania and see what it looks like. I'm sure it looks incredible or something, but let's take a look. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, thank God. Okay, the street's nice and clean, but everything else kind of looks a little bit old and worn down. So, finally, I found a place that doesn't look as bad as Birmingham. And when I say bad as Birmingham, I'm not saying Birmingham's a all terrible place. I mean, there's some really nice places in Birmingham, Alabama. It's just that the downtown is just god-awful. And a lot of, I guess you could say a lot of the urban area of Birmingham is, but the suburbs are incredible. And it's like that in every city. You have good places and bad places. Like if we go to Chicago and look around Chicago, there are plenty of bad places in Chicago. There's plenty of bad places in Los Angeles. But the nice places stick out like sore thumbs, and it's amazing to me that most of the downtowns have been kept up incredibly well. However, for the capital of Albania, which is Tirana, it did not look like that. Anyways, moving on from that, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one because we don't have enough information to speak about that in specifics because I haven't heard about Russian agents attacking Albania. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Christian Cruz, who says the attack on the airfield in Crimea was probably done with the ground-launched Storm Shadow. That would explain why they didn't see it coming. What does the enforcer say?
Storm Shadow missile. The Storm Shadow. Appellation. The Storm Shadow is an Anglo-French, low-observable, long-range, air-launched cruise missile developed since 1994 by Matra and British Aerospace, and now manufactured by MBDA. Storm Shadow is the weapon's British appellation. In French service, it's called the Scalp EG, which honestly sounds a lot cooler. But anyways, moving on from that, let's take a look at this specific missile. It is a long-range, air-launched cruise missile. They've been in operation since 2002, although the first iteration came around in 1994. We can see that they cost around 1.18 to 1.27 million, depending on the exact kind. And we can also...
Lovely.
And we can, yes, actually quite cheap as a matter of fact. And we can also tell that the operational range of this missile is around 350 miles, at a low profile, which I have no idea what that actually means. The export version only travels around 155 miles. So in that perspective, considering that it is launched directly off of the bottom, the fuselage of a Tornado, or Tornado, whichever way you'd like to pronounce it, I don't really know how the British would pronounce that, I would consider that to be plausible, but highly unlikely. Also, I just saw someone say that in UK it's pronounced missile, and I do know. Sorry about that. I will correct that from now on. But anyways, moving back on. Someone just called me a bleeding pommy. I just saw that in the chat. Anyways, moving on from that in actual serious tone. It's plausible but highly unlikely. It's something that they could do, but I think they'll require a lot of modifications to their currently existing aircraft to make that possible. So I hope that answers the question. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, a lot of people are saying... go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Well, I'm about to move on to the next one, so you don't want me to go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go on ahead. I've got nothing else to add.
All right. Well, I saw in the live chat that PSYOP said, Ukrainian dog army photos, please.
Ukrainian dog army photos. Now let's pull it up. Ukrainian dog army. I'm glad to see that a lot of our British viewers think I do a British accent fairly well. Also,
aluminium.
As a Brit, it's cringe. One person said it's cringe. Sorry. I mean, like, you know, I hope y'all are enjoying it. A lot of people seem like they are. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's a cute German Shepherd. It's like the fluffy kind, you know?
Yeah, it looks like a cross between a German Shepherd and something else.
Yeah, it kind of looks like one of those Belgian Maltese dogs, kind of. But then we can see this this dog here. I don't know what kind it is. Still, it's a dog.
Hey, it's Patron.
Patron, my boy. It's Patron, the bomb-sniffing dog.
Look at him.
Look at him. An absolute beast. Let's see here. What about some more pictures? Now, that is a fluffy German Shepherd.
Man.
That thing is fluff. And then someone said saying cringe is cringe. Oh, well, yeah, I'll let that... Oh, look at that one! That looks pretty cool, actually. I like that. That's cute. And we can see another one on the battlefront. That one's a small picture, though. And then we can see the dog army here in this picture. Oh, look at him. That's really cute. A lot of German Shepherds, it seems. Those may be a different breed, but I consider the Belgian Maltese dogs, or whatever they're called, I pretty much call those German Shepherds because they look really similar. But with that, I hope this appeases you. And also, look at this dog with the helmet on. Isn't that cute or what? I love dogs.
That dog has had it.
That dog is done. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And moving on to the next one. Real quick here. Let me do this before I forget. There we go. Joe Thompson says, do you think it is time for the U.S. to send Tomahawks?
Ooh.
Was that a yawn?
No, that was me going, ooh, because I was like, I don't know.
Oh.
I mean, like, I was trying to consider my answer, but, I mean, I think we should send everything over that we can. So my actual gut answer is yes, but the other thing that's kind of making me reserve myself is that it is really hard to camouflage a Tomahawk as anything else but a Tomahawk. It has a slow speed. It travels pretty much right above the ground, much like some of the Russian cruise missiles that are used. It would be distinct that it's a Tomahawk. You can't really excuse that as anything that's of Ukrainian origin because they don't have anything like that. So, in my opinion, for that reason, I would say no. Because if you're trying to have some kind of a plausible deniability that we send anything like that, that would be impossible to do with that kind of weapon. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, good night,
next
Psyops.
Yes, and good night to you, Psyops, and also good night to all of our viewers that are getting off at the moment. We aren't done with our question segment yet. We still have quite a few questions to get to, and yours might be next. So be sure to stick around, and also, if you want to, feel free to hit that like button as well. So up next, we have a question from Nick Poole. He's been highly anticipating me getting around to his question, and here we go, Nick. He says, so I'm a big fan of the A-10 Warthog. With their lording time and what they can do, with the incompetence of Russia's air defense, what is your belief on the A-10 now?
Now, we're bringing up the good stuff that no one's brought up before, which is the lording time. Or as the British would call it, the lollygagging time. I'm just playing. We're not going to do that accent anymore tonight. Because some people love it, some people don't. And then some people sit there because, you know, I sit here and do this for 180 days. And I don't want to sit here and live in doom and gloom. So I kind of have a joke here and there. And then someone says, that's a sign of his immaturity. And, you know, it's like, you know, if you don't know me yet, you don't know me, I guess. Anyways, moving on from that. And to answer that, the A-10 is a pretty decent plane. No one can really get around that. It's pretty decent at what it does. However, there are drawbacks to this kind of aircraft. One, it's incredibly slow. They fly somewhat low to the ground, and for those two reasons, it not only has to worry about SAM batteries, it also has to worry about man pads. And we saw that from last night when we looked at the A-10 again, most of the casualties taken during Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield were from man pads and very short range, close, I guess you say closer range surface-to-air missile batteries like Strelas. And so in my mind, for those reasons, the A-10 could be at risk of being shot down fairly easily. It's just, I don't know. I'm kind of debating it because some of the weapons that the A-10 can use can fire from a pretty considerable range. However, some other ones, specifically the 30mm Gal Avenger that it has, you have to fire that right up on the target. And there's really no way, in my opinion, to use this plane in a conventional war like this effectively. However, in an asymmetrical war like we found ourselves in Afghanistan, the loitering time on these A-10s was a godsend and a clear advantage, because these things could sit there forever until they were required, and then just, you know, just nose down, fire at the Taliban or the Mujahideen or whoever they were fighting, and then just go back into an orbit and wait until the next, I guess you could say, fire orders came in. So I hope that kind of answers the question. In my opinion, it may be useful, but in my opinion, I still have to kind of stick with my thought that I don't think this would be a useful one to send. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Machines of God, who says, Enforcer, what is the current significance of Belarus, and could Russia use them again as a launching point? Keep up the great work, and Slava Ukraine.
Slava Ukraini. And also, to answer that question, I think that the Belarusians are not really important in this war anymore. Of course, give it time. Give it about another 2 weeks. The news will probably be bringing up. Someone set a timer for that. I want someone to actually remember that. Set a timer for 14 days out from now and see if the mainstream news is talking about Belarus is probably about to enter the war. Because I'm sure they will. It almost comes through in waves, and in 2 weeks' time, I feel like the next wave of that stuff will be coming through. But they've never joined the war so far. The Russians have given up from pushing any kind of offensives from the northern part of Ukraine. And so I think Belarus's relevance...
Excuse me.
Oh, that's fine. I think Belarus's relevance in this war has largely faded into obscurity. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're going to answer 3 more questions from the live chat, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Bass Girl, who says, Enforcer, does Zelensky write his own speeches?
I don't know. I think, based on how it lists off a lot of stuff, that he may... I don't know, because he would know about all of the stuff, of course, because he's the president and most likely being apprised of the large situations, and usually he's talking about what he's done. So it could be written by him, but it could also... It's most likely written by an assistant. That's usually what people in Zelensky's position do, is the president, the prime minister, or the head of state. They usually have an assistant write up the speech for them, and then they just orate it. If y'all don't know, a lot of YouTube channels also do that as well. If you go to large YouTube channels like, well, I'm not going to name off any of them because I'm not exactly sure if they do or don't, but a lot of them, if they have a quick production schedule, they usually have writers that write the scripts. For example, Seinfeld, on the Seinfeld show, he did not come up with the stuff that he said and did on that show. It was a group of writers behind the scenes, along with David Larry, who did most of the script.
Larry David.
Yeah, David,
Larry.
Yeah, Larry David. Sorry about that. It's Larry David who did most of the writing for that show. So, in my opinion, although I don't have any information to back this up, it's probably done by an assistant, but there is a good chance that it could also be done by him as well. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the second to last one of the night.
And the second to last one of the night is from Uber Jim, who says, do you think a low in the action is due to the massive loss of assets and ammo on the Russian side?
It could be. That's a great point, actually, because we rarely ever see large amounts of Russian activity occurring anymore on film that we can kind of say, oh, it looks like they may actually be holding up a bit of a stiff resistance, or maybe they're putting up a stiff assault. We don't see that anymore. We always see Russian units just moving around. It looks like they're maybe repositioning a little bit, and then they get destroyed. So that may be a good reason why we're not really seeing the Russians do anything, and the Ukrainians may know that good and well, and they're just trying to make sure that the supplies are whittled down to the point that all units are in that kind of state, because some of them may not be. But then again, I hope that answers the question, at least in a way, at least in my opinion, because that may be true, but at the same time, I'm not exactly sure. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. So who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that lucky last viewer is Carrie B. But Carrie, before we get to your question, we have to address our final poll of the night. And the question is, would the A-10 be the most effective piece of equipment for the U.S. to send to Ukraine? It looks like 41% of you said maybe, depending on the situation. 35% said no, there are better things to send, and 24% said yes, it would help tremendously. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the A-10. It is one of the coolest aircraft I think the U.S. has ever made, but I would say that I would fall within the 36% that say there are better things to send. I think there are better pieces of equipment that would suit Ukraine's needs better. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I would have to say, I would have to actually be in the 36% of saying no, there are better things to send. And I hate to say that because I know we have a lot of A-10 fans here on the channel, and it's a good plane. It is a good plane in its own regards. However, I think that modern war has evolved in a way that aircraft in general just require a decent amount of speed, even if they are in a ground attack role. And that's why I feel that in a large conventional war like this, an F-16 or an F-15E Strike Eagle could do the job of an A-10 far better. Loitering time in a conventional war could be a detriment to an aircraft. It could lead to it being destroyed because it's sitting out there longer and it has a higher chance of being targeted. An F-16 C, let's just go with an F-16 and go look at its armament of what it can carry. So let's go here. Let's scroll down. Also, I have not seen this specific YF-16, but I do want to go to that museum, the Virginia Air and Space Center, eventually. It's right outside of Washington, D.C. by like a 30-minute drive. Anyways, moving on down, let's go to the armament on this thing. Armament. Bombs. This thing can carry a CBU-87 combined effects munition, CB-80U Gator mine. It can carry a sensor-fused weapon, which is a CBU. And it's a cluster bomb unit. It can carry a Mark 84 general purpose bomb, which are kind of like, I guess you could call them dumb bombs, like that. It also carries Mark 83 GP bombs, Mark 82 GP bombs, GBU 39 small diameter bombs. It also carries all the Paveway series, pretty much, which are your common kind of, like, when you think of a large got a smart bomb, this is what I usually think about. It's this exact kind of bomb. Moving on back, though, we can see the JDAMs, which everyone knows. It's pretty much a favorite. Whenever anyone talks about anything getting bombed by the U.S., they're always talking about drop a JDAM on the thing. And so the F-16 can carry these. It can carry pretty much everything. And so, in my opinion, I think that the F-16 could do the job of an A-10. It doesn't carry the same load of ground ordnance that an A-10 does, but it does have the speed, and therefore with speed, you have a higher chance of survivability against a SAM battery if you were to come under fire from it, and also due to an F-16 being able to operate more normally at a higher altitude, I think it would be better suited, because then it would most likely be out of range of man pads, although it still may be kept low to the ground to try and avoid SAM batteries. So with that, I hope that kind of does answer the question, at least in my opinion. I may not be considering everything because, I don't know everything in the world. I will say that, and I've said that plenty of times. So that's kind of my opinion right now with the A-10 on that poll, is that I think we would have better things to send, like an F-16, because those are cheap and readily available, or an F-15E if we were really wanting to send something that had some power behind it. And so with that, let's move on to that final question of the night.
All right, and after we answer Carrie's question, we're actually going to do one more for BC Skyman. He actually put in a question, and we are going to make sure to answer it before we get off the stream tonight. So Carrie's question was, Enforcer, have you heard any news on any revenge to the bastard that knifed and castrated the Ukrainian soldier as of yet? I hope there is some retribution planned.
I have not heard, sadly, about any news pertaining to that guy after it happened. We know his face, we know where he lives, we know all of that, but he's disappeared into the war itself, and unfortunately we haven't heard any news about him since then. Hopefully we will in the future. I know that the Ukrainians, if they find him, will most likely bring him to justice or execute him on the spot for what he did. I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but if you were a frontline soldier knowing that that happened to another soldier that was captured, I'm sure that they would just execute the guy on the spot, and at that point, can you really blame him? But unfortunately, I haven't heard anything about it, and I hate to say that, BC Skyman, because I would love to tell you some good news on that and say that the guy's been found, and he's going to be put in prison, or he's been executed, but sadly, we don't have any news going either way. And so with that, we're going to move on to the final question of the night, and thank you so much for the care, BC, and I know that you have relatives over there.
And that was actually Carrie's question.
I thought you said that was BC Skyman's question.
Well, that'll be after Carrie's question.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope that answers the question, Carrie. And thank you once again for a great one. And also, I would like to thank the person who just threw in $100 US, Marsik Nashkis, Slava Ukraini, donated $100 to revive soldiers of Ukraine. And I got to thank you so much for the support, because that does help out soldiers on the ground with their ailments and wounds that they've received from this war. And so with that, we're now on to the final question of the night. And sorry for getting y'all's names mixed up, but with that, we're now on to BC Skyman's question.
And BC said, my nephew works for the U.S. government. He is Ukrainian. He said that car bomb the other day could possibly be a false flag to start full mobilization of the Russian army, ?
I mean, like, maybe. A false flag like that, I usually veer away from saying that things are false flags, because when one enters false flag territory, everyone wants to start throwing up false flag on everything, and pretty much once you get into that good enough, the Russians are shelling the Russians to make the Ukrainians look bad, and the Ukrainians are shelling the Ukrainians to make them look to make the Russians look bad. So I'm not sure if it was a false flag or wasn't. I would honestly feel like if it was done by a Russian terrorist group, they may have just found an opportune time to strike. But then again, I'm not entirely sure if that would be the case or not. That could be a false flag by the Russian government. It could very well be, so that way they could say, look at these terrible people. We need to mobilize the whole military and go down there and snuff them out. And so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm leaning more in the direction of that may have been an actual attack by that Russian terrorist organization, more so than, I guess you could say, a false flag by the Russians, because killing off that guy's daughter is a pretty drastic measure to take, especially considering he's higher up in the government. If they really wanted to make a false flag, they could have done something like bomb a subway, or something like that, where random people got killed that weren't directly connected to the upper inner circles of the government. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe they wanted to make it incredibly believable, and so they picked his daughter to kill. I don't know. But with that, I hope we've been able to answer that question fairly well, BC, because it may be a false flag. I don't know, but still, my opinion is it may not be. And so with that, we've now reached the end of tonight's stream. And it's been one hell of a night, everyone. We've gotten up, just to check our final figure, to $13,575 on this fundraiser for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. An incredible figure. And I'm absolutely honored and astonished, actually, that the Lee Spring Army was able to do so well tonight with this fundraiser, and that we were able to get this much help to Ukrainian soldiers who have been wounded in this war. It is an absolute honor, once again, to know that the Lee Spring Army is the community of the Enforcer channel, and that no other YouTube channel out there, big nor small, can say that they have done this much to help Ukraine. I'm proud of every single one of y'all. And I thank you all so much once again for watching this news, enjoying our channel, and helping us to reach unbelievable heights on these Sunday night fundraisers. Because if no one else could do it, if anyone could do it, it would be us. To make sure that I put that in the right words, because those kinds of sayings always mix me up. But anyways, thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been a wonderful night of news, and I hope to see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the day 181 news of the war in Ukraine. Thank you all so much.
Ukraine.
That scared me. That was actually really loud. Thank you all once again for your support, and Vichne Slava Rusim, Slava Ukraini. Have a great night, everyone, and take care.
Запануєм і ми, браття,